This video is brought to you by channel partner 4 years running, Squarespace. Stick around to learn more about them, as well as a special offer they're making available through my channel.
I mean, I would say all of the Harry Potter movies are shit.
I agree. I think they're so boring. Nothing happens in them. They're so boring.
Bad. Like, the worst thing about those movies is they retroactively enlighten you into how shit the books also kind of were, which was a bad part of it. Like, I really enjoyed those books. Then I watched the movies and I was like, these are terrible. Why are they so bad compared to the books? And I read one of the books and I was like, oh no, they're the same.
The thing is as well,
my connection dropped out. This is going to be a thing. Are you guys talking? Were you talking about Animorphs?
Yes. No, that's incorrect. There's not a bad word that can be said about Animorphs.
Thank you. My man.
Welcome everyone to Prince Per Second, the foremost Animorphs podcast. Apparently, we're all back from traveling, back in our homes, missing each other dearly. But we will always have this. We'll always have our bi-weekly, fortnightly Google Meet.
Sure.
I'm Lucy James, joined by Jake Baldino.
Hello.
Hello. Ralph, aka Skill Up.
What's up?
And who's this?
It's me, Gerard.
Special guest. A new
special guest.
Gerard, when he's shaved, looks like this. Yeah. Can you believe it?
I'm a dollar store Gerard. That's what they call me.
The half. What would be a play
I'm the incompletionist.
The incompletionist. Our podcast gremlin, yes. Tam. Thank you so much. Because Gerard can't be here today, so thank you so much for hopping in. It's been. It feels like I'm still trying to come.
It's been a while.
Oh, it's been a while. I'm still coming up for air after Summer Game Fest, to be honest. What about you guys?
Yeah, well, I mean, had to fly back, and that was, obviously fun, 15 or 16 hours on the plane, and then basically had to smash Final Fantasy after that. And then after that, had to get smashed by Reddit and Twitter for a week. So that was also really fun. So I've had a really great fortnight, actually. You've
been playing Fortnite? Sick.
I actually re-downloaded Fortnite again. I do this on occasion. Does anyone else do this? Just re-download Fortnite because you feel like you should be playing it because there's just so much interesting shit going on there.
You know what, Ralph?
And then you play it and you're like, actually, I don't like this. I really wish I liked this. But I don't like it, unfortunately.
I have a good time with Fortnite, especially with no build.
Yeah, sure.
Because, I don't have the dexterity of a 5-year-old child who can just build walls up around me while I'm blinking. But I dip in every so often, but every time I see that, they're so overwhelming. When you go on, if I can't figure out immediately how to start a specific kind of match because I'm getting lost in fucking Battle Pass menus.
Sure,
that's where I am with Fortnite.
But
then you see Geralt flossing. So
I like to just never touch it and just imagine it in my head how it is because I just see clips and stuff Gohan AR-15ing Morpheus or something or Captain America.
That's it. I see those clips and I'm like, I should be that Goku right now having all that fun. But then I'd play it and I'm like, oh, okay.
I think it's worth checking out. Jake, I don't know if you've played it. Have you played Spider-Man in it?
No. I saw he got some ropes. He actually, excuse me, not ropes.
Well, it's disgusting.
Wow. Webs.
Peter Parker shooting ropes.
Oh my God.
It's worth installing and playing a Spider-Man just to see. I don't know if he's still in there, but see their take on the swinging mechanics, which are pretty good.
Yeah.
They're really quite good. Yeah.
See those.
The fact that they even did that is crazy. And the fact that they do that with certain characters, they do throw in cool stuff because they don't have to. They could just do a skin. But I like that. I like that
they've got $1 trillion and all the developers in North Carolina or wherever the hell they have.
Sure. Yeah.
Well, the big news, obviously. So there's a lot of topics to touch on today. We've done our Fortnite catch-up. FTC... We've had a Nintendo Direct. Final Fantasy XVI came out. Overwatch. Be overwatching. Some issues there. So we've got a packed show. I know we're not going to go into FTC stuff too deeply because with the exception of Tam, none of us have a law degree.
Tam has a law degree?
Hell yeah, buddy.
Wow. Absolutely incredible, really. So hang on, how did you get from I'm going to study law to I'm going to play video games for a living?
Well, let me tell you the exact moment where I realized that I had made not exact moment, but I realized I had made a terrible mistake that I needed to immediately pull up from. It was when an hour before my one of my law exams, I believe it was my tort law exam, I was in the university. I get everywhere I go, I get there an hour early because I'm like so anxious about being late to stuff. Lucy can tell you this. I go everywhere mad early.
It's frustrating sharing a cab with him to the airport. Remember that time we turned up like 6 hours early?
Oh no, Dad.
Listen. Sometimes some of us get randomly selected for checks. Okay. I was in and you know what I thought? I thought, how am I going to waste this time? How am I going to get there? I'm getting nervous. So I sat in the toilet while at the university playing Phoenix Wright. And I was like, you know what? I do have an interest in law, but it's not in practicing law. It's in playing this video game. Maybe I should double down in this on this. So, yeah.
Wow, that's wild.
That's incredible.
Yeah, right. Okay. Speaking of which, I actually played Ghost Trick, but we'll come back to that later.
Banger.
And my comment was though that you are the second person I know that has a law degree in this space. The other one is Muselk, the Overwatch turned
What?
Right? Yeah. He left a law degree to do content creation.
Wow.
Good for him.
Good old Muscle K.
Good for him.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
Damn.
That's it. So yeah, man.
So, yeah.
That's wild. So if we ever have any legal troubles, we'll hit you up.
Hit me up.
Tam signs all our NDAs
I
because he has
read
to
every
read them
single
and
one of those
understands
just
them.
Yeah,
to make
of
sure
course.
that there's no. There was one NDA which I read. I won't say who did it, but generally NDAs are fairly like templated, where they have the same language. Generally, the things I'm looking for like is exclusionary stuff, where it's like most of them are like, hey, if you reveal this information, we're going to be very upset. However, if you're able to develop this information on your own or are told by a third party, etc., that's what I'm looking for to make sure it's in there. That's generally what I'm looking for, and there's usually some language about like kind of like recompense and that kind of stuff, but it's usually just like, hey, we're going to be real mad and there's going to be some legal actions. There's a couple. One time someone tried it where it was like, if you fuck this up, we're going to charge you $2 million. And I was like,
oh, I know who that
I
is.
sent it back.
Yeah.
I was like, no, you're not. And they were like, I was like, okay.
Yeah.
I forgot about that. But yeah, so the FTC court case with Microsoft regarding the acquisition of Activision Blizzard is ongoing. We're recording this on the Wednesday for context. We're not going to delve into it too deeply because, like I said, we're not legal experts. But there have been some juicy tidbits coming out of it. It has been wild to see. On that first day, was it the first day where Tam was in there?
Yes.
Oh, you
Tam was
That was
in the
when
court
they were
case?
complaining
You were
about
cited, right?
a
Day
GameSpot
one.
coverage of something, weren't they?
No.
No.
They-
Tam was fully in there.
They
What?
use me
They
as
played
evidence.
a clip of him.
Yeah.
Saying what? What was the clip?
It was a interview or an examination of Pete Hines, and they were like going through and kind of like poking holes in why things are exclusive and the history of Bethesda's exclusivity and that kind of stuff, and like trying to figure out why they make games like that and trying to, build out a case for themselves. And at one point they were like, so we have this interview with Tamor Hussein, and they like play
Ex-lawyer
the interview.
Tamor Hussein.
They play like chunks of that interview and he has to respond to it. And I just got loads of messages. I was like in the toilet. I'm always in the toilet when legal stuff is happening.
God
Yeah,
damn
what
it,
is
man.
happening here?
It was in the office. I was
You've heard
like,
of the Lincoln lawyer. Now you've heard, welcome the toilet lawyer.
was the leaking lawyer?
Please
The
step
Lincoln
into my
lawyer.
office.
It smells
Flush
fine.
sound.
Oh my god.
But like I just came out and I was
Case
like,
dismissed. Flush sound.
I came out and I was getting loads of messages being like, are you seeing this? And I was like, whoa, what's going on? And yeah, Rebecca Valentine was on the ground, was like, they're playing you in the courtroom? Like, fantastic. Hopefully I can use
That's
that for my
great.
visa.
Love it.
God.
But that was
So,
wild
yeah.
though, because that little bit there was Pete Hines was basically being put on the spot because there were all these internal emails. Because Pete Hines is like a head honcho at Bethesda. He's probably like their number, 2 or 3 man, depending on how you slice it. And he basically was emailing around being like, you guys have said that Call of Duty will not be exclusive, but you're making everything Bethesda exclusive. Did anyone at Xbox think to give us a heads up about this? Because Todd is about to go to DICE, and you don't think some journalist is going to press him and ask him why COD is going to be multi-platform, but The Elder Scrolls 6 and Starfield will not be? And
When I read that, it reminded me, like the energy was Tony Stark built this in a cave.
In a box of scraps.
It was very crotchety, and we didn't get to see the response that he got, but it was an interesting call out. But it's like, it's good on him, I guess, for like calling out that bullshit and that inconsistency.
Yeah.
Because, you know, Microsoft is definitely trying to have it both ways. I mean, I understand why they're trying to have it both ways, in the sense that exclusives are still part of how this industry works. I mean, look at Final Fantasy. You know, you saw so many people rushing out to buy a PS5 because they really wanted to experience that game. And that's how this industry works. And like Satya Nadella, even just today in his testimony, was like, I don't like exclusives. I wish they didn't exist.
I don't want exclusives.
He's like, if it was up to me, we wouldn't have any exclusives at all. But this is the way the ecosystem works. And it's like, it is. And so you can understand why Phil Spencer might want to put, you know, as many games as he can as exclusive to try and find a place for Xbox, whatever. But you can also understand why Bethesda is going to be like, well, hang on a second. What's up with this? Why are you not doing that for COD, you know? So, yeah.
That's wild.
It's very
But there's been a bunch of other stuff in there, like Elder Scrolls 6, at least 5 years away. I don't think that's a surprise to anyone, given the scope of Starfield. But, you know, I think the more fun thing, especially obviously being friends and colleagues with Jeff Grubb, is the list of potential acquisitions that Xbox was looking into. So you had Sega, Square Enix, and of course Bungie. And so as soon as when that came out, Grubb was like, where's the tweet from Pete Parsons, like head of Bungie, saying that I was categorically false or something?
Sure.
It's like, yeah, well, of course they're going to look at stuff like that. Like,
yeah, I mean,
Sony's probably got their own little dirty list of acquisitions they want to make.
These companies are always looking at acquisitions, like non-stop. It is like right now they're probably still looking at more acquisitions. That's how it works. So it's not a surprise at all.
They
were
probably
looking
have
at
like
From
whole
Software
departments just running the math, just in case, all the time.
Yeah. My favorite thing to come out of this. Have you seen the Sony document where they redacted a bunch of information?
Yes.
My God.
If you just look at it, you can clearly see the information. It's incredible.
And like, no, just to be super clear what this is, right? Because you wouldn't believe this until you saw it yourself. Imagine a document, a piece of paper, and someone has gone over it with a pen to try and redact certain stuff. But the pen they've used is not dark enough. So you can still see through the black thing and you can read the words underneath, and they still scanned and uploaded and submitted these documents as evidence. And so that's how we now know that Last of Us had about a $200 million budget, Last of Us 2, and Horizon Forbidden West had about a $220 million budget. That information was all secret before, but now it is just out there today. The court has now pulled all evidence to be reviewed to make sure none of this person with this magic pen hasn't gone through and like done other stuff, like, you know, friggin' Phil Spencer saying, you know, Jim Ryan is a doo-doo poo-poo head or something, and it's just blocked out. I hope that person was in charge of redacting that line. But man, that's crazy. And but again, not super surprising to see that number either. We know that AAA budgets are just so massive now. We know the lead times on them. Matt Booty said recently that we just need to get used to the idea that big AAA games have like a 5-year dev time, and that a single failure can sink a studio. And it's true. Like, it's, you know, if you're betting $200 million and 5 years of your time, I mean, yeah, and then flops, you don't really get to do that again unless you've got a really big underwriter willing to back you. Because if you like, look at, for example, Luminous with
Forspoken?
With Forspoken.
Yeah.
And before that, Final Fantasy. Now, Final Fantasy 15 obviously was carried by its name, but even that was still quite critically, like, you know, people really shat on that after a while. But I mean, obviously Forspoken was that straw that broke the camel's back. A lot of money spent on that. Big flop, and then they just get shuttered and they get folded into the rest of Square Enix. So yeah man, it's very high stakes at this
I mean,
town.
The Luminous one is kind of interesting. Well, I think that we're seeing how vital it is to be able to double dip on your development effort and try to make the most of what, because like the Forspoken stuff is definitely, it was not good, but there are clearly things in there that are in Final Fantasy. Like, you can see there's elements of it that have carried over. The interesting thing with Last of Us currently is all that effort put into Last of Us Part 2 hasn't reappeared anywhere else yet. I imagine it's going to, in some fashion, appear in whatever that multiplayer game is, or whatever their next game is going to be very similar. So these like, the weird thing is like these bets are getting much, much bigger, and almost in every way it feels like there's going to be some sort of implosion, or there's going to be some sort of negative kind of, not negative, but like it could be treated as negative kind of repercussion of it, where games, they stop taking major risks from game to game, and then you get one major game that's something completely different, and then you get various iterations on that game, or like reused assets of that game. It kind of reminds me of like Crash Team Rumble, where it's like we played Crash Team Rumble the other day, and we were like, they are just using these assets in a new way, and it's like fair play. It's interesting, but like that's on a game that probably doesn't cost as much as either Forspoken or The Last of Us Part 2 cost to make. So as I just see that happening way more in the future. So I think that's something we probably should start getting used to.
Yeah, sorry, go Liz.
No, I was just about to say that I played Crash Team Rumble with you last week, and it has already left my memory of a game that I have
left
played.
My memory and my hard drive.
Although, turns out I was actually very good at it. Wow. So
don't you hate when that happens? I always end up being good at the games that don't matter.
Top scorer.
I reckon you'd be pretty good at Tony Hawk, though, man. I reckon you put that time into it, like, you know. I reckon you could, you know. So like,
sadly, a game that doesn't matter. Hate to see it.
Well,
unfortunately, yeah, that's the thing.
Not anymore.
I can't find party. It's not like a Smash tournament. You know, you can't go to like a local cafe and find people. Hey, what are you guys doing? Tony Hawk tournament. Let's go. No.
That'd be pretty cool, though. I reckon if you built a Tony Hawk tournament at like a local cafe somewhere in some like cool little like suburb, people would come. I reckon it would work.
If you build it, they will come.
There's a business to be had in that, like one-off tournaments for games that you wouldn't ordinarily like assume would have a tournament. Like, we're gonna do a Def Jam Fight for New York tournament. It's gonna be one day. It's gonna be weirdly super produced, and
it's gonna be DJ'd by Funkmaster Flex.
Yeah, like Funkmaster Flex is gonna be there. A few of the actual Def Jam artists will be there, and you can pay your way in, have a concert, play the game, and be done. I bet you could.
Yep. Well, we have like this thing in Sydney now called like Fortress. I don't know if you have anything like this. It's a big purpose-built gamer complex, and it's like a restaurant or cafe or bar and it has like a proper esports kind of like setup thing, like if you want to have like a little small tournament there. I haven't actually been before, but I've heard it's good, like it's a good place. So
isn't that what they turned the Luxor into in Vegas? So there's the casino, the pyramid one, the one that was sinking. They turned that into a big esports thing.
No way.
So I don't know. That's similar. Yeah, it's like HyperX or something.
And just like esports, it's also sinking.
Sinking. Exactly right. Crazy.
Yeah. Actually, the one time I went into the Luxor, there was just loads of buckets on the floor because it was leaking.
Oh my god! Holy shit.
They were like gamer centers like that in London a lot. Like, remember Trocaderos? They changed like one of the back sides of it into. I was working at HMV at that time, and they turned it into like an esports cafe, and it did pretty well. But yeah, I don't know about that, but that would be cool.
The
the Luxor.
Pivoting back to the old mate Jim and Phil's little stoush. I think one of the more interesting. I love that
they're called Jim and Phil.
Jim and
Phil. They sound like characters from fucking EastEnders.
Yeah,
it's Jim and Phil.
That's right.
Just hanging out.
But you know, Jim could be from EastEnders, I guess. You know, it's
he's not. He's from the northeast.
Yeah. Okay. Whatever. It's his homeland. Okay. We're not going to subdivide it that much. Okay. Whatever. It's all part of the same.
You get
island.
people from outside of London coming in. Remember?
There you
There's
go.
lots of Irish people.
Remember me?
Scottish people.
Apparently they're bringing Neighbours back as well. I heard this from
They are.
Rich. Yes,
is Toadie going to be in it still?
I don't fucking know.
I feel like he's the Nick Fury of Neighbours.
I think Kylie's going to be in.
Like, he just will not go away.
We are the worst with segues today. Let's focus, okay? There's a court case going on with the FTC.
Very important.
We're not here to talk about Neighbours, okay? And one of the things I wanted to say was that it was funny. It was revealed, actually, that there was talk that Starfield might be a PS5 exclusive at some point. That Call of Duty might also be a PS5 exclusive because Bobby Kotick had threatened to remove COD from Xbox unless Xbox gave them a better revenue share deal. And so all of this time, I think we've been worried about, or the discourse has been about whether or not Xbox would make all these games exclusive, when there was clearly a plan for PlayStation to make all of these games exclusive by some other means. So I guess my question is, has any of this changed your perspective on whether or not this acquisition should go through? Are you still like, it's the corporations, fuck them, let them fight? Or you're like, actually, I think it might be good for this to happen because it makes Xbox more competitive when they've had a last place finish for a long time now? Or are you like, no, it absolutely should not happen because consolidation of the games industry or whatever? Like, where you guys land on this at this point?
I'm at the one where you said fuck them, let them fight, let the corporations fight. I think for me, it's been going on for so long now that I've lost sight of like what the point of any of this even is. Maybe it's just because I'm so online, like following the news, but it just seems so like whatever now. And now hearing like the corporations essentially publicly are saying one thing, and then through emails and through documents, they're discussing other plans and other ways. So it's like there's a lot of he said, she said, that's things that they're deliberately saying for like public posturing that just makes it all the more muddled and makes me kind of care even less.
Yeah, I'm already anticipating the gritty Social Network movie or limited TV show of this, you know? Like...
Oh, yeah. Who would you cast?
Yeah.
Oh, man, who would you
Daniel
cast?
We were talking about this the other day.
All right, I got a wild one out of left field.
All right, here we
go. On.
Do you guys watch Adam Sandler movies, like the older ones?
Yeah.
Do you remember say Rob Schneider as Phil Spencer?
No.
Please, no.
There's one guy, one of like the Adam Sandler friends that always shows up. Hey, the one who talks like this. He looks just like Phil Spencer.
Yep. I know what you're talking about.
And he should play Phil Spencer.
Totally. Absolutely. I reckon get Liam Neeson as Jim Ryan. Come on, tell me that wouldn't work.
I will
tell me that wouldn't work.
I have
tell
a very ridiculous set of skills. It's ruining acquisitions.
I have sent a specific set of emails.
That's right. Exactly.
I will redact the information.
I think this is interesting.
I will
very
find
badly.
you.
I felt like I was intrigued by this whole thing to begin with, because it is one, there's like arguments to be made for both sides, right? Like you could say, oh, Microsoft is doing this to be competitive, which is true. And at the same time, it does have you could make the argument that it is almost anti-consumer. And despite the kind of protestations of like Phil Spencer, who's like, I'm gonna make sure that it's cool for ages, there is still probably somewhere a piece of paper that says we're gonna be cool for 10 years, but after that, fuck them all, which is likely. At the same time, you know, you get Jim Ryan and Sony being like, we feel this is X, Y, and Z is bad for the industry, but and that makes it seem quite altruistic and like we care about the industry. Deep down, they don't give a shit. They're just worried about their own bottom line and how this acquisition affects them. So ultimately, they are just two corporations fighting. Let them fight either way at the end of the day. Like, it's going to be the same outcome. These corporations will keep getting money and growing and that kind of stuff. The thing that really frustrates me and has been frustrating as someone who's been like watching it and reporting it is how this whole situation has just supercharged the fanboy wars lately, which is just, it's been infuriating. And like, I've never been more embarrassed to be someone who's been interested in video games than I have been in the last few days or last few weeks with this stuff happening. One, because of the way that reporters are being treated by the general audience. When they tweet about what's happening, they state fact or whatever's being said, and they just get the absolute shit munchers from this industry just coming up and being like, X, Y. I watched a few streams, and one of them that I tuned into just happened to be like a channel that I was like, live, what's here? It was one of two channels. I hit it, and I was listening to it while walking around. It's actually like in Westfield, I was buying some shoes, and I was listening at the same time. And also, like, it's so patently clear that no one has any understanding of what's being said, especially on these like amateur streams of just gamers doing like, because this every time this person like someone a lawyer or the FTC would be like, can I direct your attention to exhibit 4AB? Whoever's on the stream would go, oh, they got him. And it's like, what are you talking about? He's just said, look at this exhibit. You don't know what's gonna happen. And like clockwork. And then on
case closed.
Yeah, they'll be like, oh,
case
and then he'll be like, oh, what he's saying is this. And then the crony would be like, yeah, I know. He's got him. And then the flip side, an Xbox person will be like doing the same thing. And it's just like, oh God, I wish in this industry fans were a little more, they could put their egos aside and just be like, we don't understand this. We're just going to try and figure this out with you guys. Yeah. And that's been like the most infuriating part of it. And I think that's really what pushed me to the point where I'm like, let them fight and just let it be over with. Yeah. Because I'm tired of the weirdos in this industry being so prevalent and attacking people who are just trying to report what's happening.
But the thing is, as well, it's like, this is just the injunction.
Yeah.
This thing is nowhere near over. And so we've got months more of this news cycle, months more of this kind of annoying back and forth. So I'm team let them fight, but just get over with. Get over with.
I feel like I am ultimately sure team let them fight, because I agree that the corporations, who gives a fuck, but I also agree industry consolidation is a bad trend, of course, we've spoken about. It's also inevitable, and that's how it's
look at Embracer.
If
how
it's
that's
not
going.
Yeah, totally. If it's not this, it's going to be something else. Eventually it's all going to get scooped up and Jeff Bezos is going to own everything, right? So at the same time, I think I have been somewhat persuaded by some arguments that have emerged in regards to, for example, Starfield. Now, Starfield was a PS5 exclusive this year. I think that'd be really fucked, because you've already had Final Fantasy be a PS5 exclusive. You'd have two of the biggest RPGs of the year being exclusives. You've got a Japanese RPG, and obviously we'll talk about Final Fantasy being an RPG later on in the show, but you've got Final Fantasy, massive Japanese property, and then you've got Starfield, massive Western property. They speak to obviously different audiences, but there's huge amounts of overlap, and they're flagships things, and for them to both be PS5 exclusive by virtue of third-party deals, that would really hurt Xbox this year for sure, right? Then you hear this threat about Bobby Kotick going up to Xbox and being like, give me a better deal or I'm gonna make it, I'm gonna take Call of Duty away from you. That's a really big deal. And you've definitely seen, obviously, the console install base of PlayStation 5. That lead is growing very quickly, and Xbox is feeling threatened by that. So there are a few things that I look at and I'm like, I'm not necessarily thinking, oh, well, yeah, Xbox should acquire them. But what I am thinking is I can really understand why Phil Spencer and Microsoft have made these moves, because clearly there's a lot of pressure for them to make a big play when they've got this amount of content being gobbled up by Sony. They need to respond by some means, So I don't know, and again, I think if they don't win this battle, Xbox is always going to be around, surely, most likely, but it really does put them in a pretty tricky position. And you can imagine that PlayStation is going to have a lot of momentum to be able to scoop up even more exclusives in the future and just continue to ride that momentum. So I don't know. As I said, I'm not in Xbox's camp by any means, but what I am saying is I have been moved by those arguments and those revelations, because I do think they're salient,
I also feel like it's easier to be moved when the Sony argument is, we think, this XYZ shouldn't be an exclusive. And then everyone's like, oh God, they're completely right. It shouldn't be exclusive. And the hypocrisy there is they built a business on exclusives. All they do is make exclusives. And they bought Bungie, and they're going to make games that are exclusive with them. So it's just it's much easier to be swayed by that kind of argument. And I think I'm where you are as well. I agree that consolidation is bad, but there's clearly a move that's being made here on Microsoft's part that they're making because they feel they are quite significantly behind, as opposed to being we're on top and now we're going to just start punching below us to make sure no one can come anywhere near us, which is what Sony often feels like they're doing.
Correct. And I think it's an interesting question to ask. If Sony had the pockets deep enough to buy Activision Blizzard, how would we feel about that versus Xbox acquiring it? And I would feel like I would be like, no, that is a bad idea. No. You are already crushing it on so many fronts, and then you do this. I mean, that would be the end of Xbox. But then I feel like, well, if Xbox gets it, I still think Sony would be fine and thrive and do really well for itself.
I think so.
And I feel like Microsoft would be more competitive. I do feel it would have some negative impacts on Sony for sure, but I still think their business would survive and thrive, where I feel like this acquisition would actually be really devastating for Xbox if it was shoe on the other foot, so to speak, So I've definitely thought a lot about that in the last few days, for sure.
I think there's also a lot of worry on the Sony side about, so Xbox is definitely in third place, and in terms of the games that they can make and put out there, they're not on par, not on par, but like they're not as high profile and as frequent as PlayStation is. But I feel like the edge that Xbox has is their technology and their proliferation, which they are. I think they're like head and shoulders above Sony and Nintendo. I think that's a genuine worry for Sony, and it's something that is probably a major factor in trying to stop this, because it doesn't really matter if they get exclusives locked down or games taken away from them. The big worry is like Microsoft is on track to just turn TVs into a Xbox device or a console device, or just put out this USB device that you can suddenly play games on. And they figured out cloud gaming in a way where, xCloud is pretty good and Sony's still trying to play catch up. I feel like this is as much about a lot of like, we want to make sure that they're not taking stuff away, as much as it is like, we're concerned that they are reshaping the landscape around us. And by the time they're done, we will be in a much worse position.
Yeah.
For sure. Jake, what do you reckon?
I don't know. I'm not that smart.
It's like, I want a Tony Hawk tournament. God damn it.
Can't stop thinking about it.
All right. Enough about FTC stuff, although I'm sure we'll talk about it in future episodes. Now, a quick word from our sponsor.
One question I often get is how to break into the world of content creation. There's a lot of ways to do it: streaming, community building, YouTube, games media, many ways to cut your teeth. Obviously, my stuff eventually ends up on YouTube, but what if YouTube wasn't the right fit for you? What if you wanted to build your own independent gaming outlet or blog, allowing you to talk about games how you like, building a portfolio of work as you did so that you could one day leverage into different opportunities? Well, if you're just starting out, then could I suggest Squarespace? Squarespace lets you build professional-looking websites in minutes. You just select from their extensive list of pre-built templates, customize those templates to your desire, and boom, you are in business. It really is that easy. Squarespace's intuitive tools and huge library of templates make it super easy to get started. If you can handle formatting a Word document or a PowerPoint slide, then you are already well and truly equipped to make a fantastic looking website through Squarespace. Once it's live and your content starts going up, Squarespace has all sorts of back-end tools to help you track and grow your site. Detailed analytics tools showcase what your audience is clicking on, and SEO tools and social media integration make it easier for your audience to find you. It's a simple end-to-end solution that could be the start of your content creation journey if the written word is what interests you. If it is and you want to get started, then visit squarespace.com to start building your website through their free trial. And if you want to get serious, then use offer code SKILLUP for 10% off your purchase of a domain name. Thanks Squarespace for sponsoring the video, and thank you for watching it.
We had a Nintendo Direct last week at the ungodly hour of 7 a.m., which... shout out to all the West Coast based news folks who had to get up for that one. What were your overall impressions? What was the thing that kind of leapt out the most? Jake, I'll go to you.
I liked it. I thought they brought the heat. Mm-hmm. There was a bunch of like compelling things I was very excited to see. And it just felt good. I feel like a lot of Nintendo Directs have been like, there's one really cool thing, and then a lot of just like, good, solid other things highlighted. But this felt like a couple of really cool surprises back to back. For me, the biggest thing is actually the new WarioWare game, WarioWare Move It, because the last WarioWare game was more of like a multiplayer co-op weird thing. This is very much a return to form, like throwback to the Game Boy Advance game where it's just pure quick micro game insanity. And I love that. And the fact that they're taking advantage of the Switch and you got to like milk a cow with the Switch. So basically it's like 1-2 Switch, like, but it's
with Wario,
but better, but with Wario yelling at you in between little things, which that was the big thing for me. That, and of course that was technically where we got the Metal Gear Solid Master Collection release date. So we know it's coming to Switch, which is cool. It's coming October 24th. So I'm very curious to see how this goes. The trailer outlined a bunch of other stuff it's going to come with, like what it actually specifically collects, which is nice to have that highlighted. Didn't expect to see that during a Nintendo Direct, but yeah,
it's great, isn't it? I was really pumped for that. Actually, that's going to be nice, hopefully. And there's been leaks that Volume 2 will contain Metal Gear 4. There's rumors that it's going to finally get off PS3 and will be available on other consoles. Which
do you guys wonder if they've even invested yet in terms of porting that over? Because I feel like that's a big undertaking, and I feel like they're sitting and waiting and seeing how this all goes first.
No, I reckon. Well, my guess would be that they're gonna do it some like dodgy emulation, and it's gonna just be bad. Like that's my guess.
That's
I reckon that's what it will be. So.
I mean, that's what Nintendo has done in the past, and if Nintendo can do it, Konami can absolutely do that.
Konami does what Nintendo does.
Exactly.
Sorry.
Yeah, I was surprised to see that one. I mean, for me, I was very surprised to see Arkham Trilogy.
Yeah,
Especially Night.
I love when Batman shows up.
Yeah, it's like that's a really good looking game, and I wonder how that runs on Switch. Like,
you know
Arkham
exactly
Knight-
how it runs.
Well,
Yeah, I
guess
know.
So. I guess
as
so.
long as it's not as bad as how it ran on PC when it launched. But I was playing on Steam Deck actually. I was playing City not so long ago, and I was like, God, I would kill for another Batman game.
Yeah, totally. Don't worry.
Just one of these Batman games.
The
Suicide Squad on the way.
soon,
shoot
don't
the
worry.
big purple stuff
Well,
to big damage.
But Batman will
Massive
show
damage.
up, at least.
Yes, he will.
And you have to kick his ass.
He is in it.
Or sorry, shoot his
Yep.
ass.
Yep.
Oh, God.
Yeah, no, I liked it as well. I thought it was great. Yeah, I was actually really. It's nice to see another 2D Mario because they've got the Super Mario Brothers Wonder.
Yes.
Which, you know,
Elephant Mario,
of course.
Long
but all the shit
Mario.
that- Long Mario. That's like the After Dark version.
Call him like spaghetti.
But yeah, I mean, it's just nice to see Nintendo doing that. When was the last new 2D Mario game? When was that? I can't remember.
3D Land?
I
Was
lose
that
track.
was
Where's
that
Gerard?
Wii U or what? That wasn't Switch, was it?
Well, no, it was Wii U, but I can't remember if there was a 3D one, a 3DS one after that. Sorry.
Yeah. So either way, it's been a long time, and so it's just nice to see Nintendo doing this thing, and I'm really keen for that because it's been so long. And also, I think my tastes have changed over the years, and I wasn't as close to the 2D Mario. So like, I grew up on that, and then I stopped playing them for a long time. And then I feel like I'm interested to see where that's gone now and how they've evolved that, or if at all, or Tam shaking his head.
I just remember technically New Super Mario Bros. U Deluxe, which was a Switch version of the Wii U version.
Right.
And that has new stuff in
yeah.
it too, right?
Yeah, so it had extra content, so I guess that's the last 2D one.
Okay, right.
That was a real great, actually. I think you'll find.
I just remembered it as a thing that my brain has dumped because it was like this shit again.
Yep. So I'm keen to see what that's like because I remember like the 2D stuff. Obviously, we see a lot of it in the indie space. From Nintendo, there was like the Kirby stuff. The Tropical Freeze was, I think, the last proper Nintendo made or retro, whatever, like 2D property that I've played from them, and that was incredible, right? And so I wonder where things are at now with that style of game from Nintendo. So I'm very keen.
Well, it does look, when you hold it up against the other 2D Mario games, this one does look like the one that is getting like a real injection of creativity. Like there was a lot going on in that trailer.
There was.
From the backgrounds, the music, to the new types of little looks for characters, and then all the abilities and stuff. That is what got me really excited. It wasn't even the fact that, new 2D Mario. Because to be honest, that doesn't do much for me anymore.
Sure.
But seeing how wacky and wild they're going with it, I'm like, okay, all right.
Yeah, I agree.
I'm just waiting for a follow-up to Odyssey.
Yeah, I
If
wonder what's the
only.
deal with that, eh? I wonder what's the deal. Like, when is the next? Yeah, maybe
It
it's
takes
just
a while.
launch title for the next the
Maybe.
next Switch, I guess. Switch 2.
Instead of his hat,
Um,
this time it's going to be mechanics centered around his pants, which I think is actually a really good actual idea. You're welcome, Nintendo.
No, I want some South Asian representation, and I want to see Mario throw his shoe because that's what that's what parents do,
That's right.
and that's what my mom's good at, throwing shoes around corners. So I want to see Mario do it as well.
With Italians, it's either the house phone or a spoon.
I've had spoon as well. I've had spoon. My mom once bounced a shoe off a wall to hit me from around. It was like a pedal
Wow.
shot, and I was
That's like the
it
Eddie
hit me
Murphy
in the
bit.
back of the head, and I turned around. I was like, that was impressive. I'll take that.
That's awesome.
Also, Super Mario RPG is a pretty big deal for that.
Yeah,
that
I never
announcement.
played the original. Has
Oh
anyone
man,
played it?
Me
Oh
neither.
yeah,
No.
it is an all timer. It is like fucking amazing. I think it holds up really, really well as well.
But like,
the
why?
original
Why?
version. Oh, it's just
Why is it
like
so good?
it's the same kind of like weird I guess it's more normal now, but at that time it was a level of creativity applied to that franchise that was unexpected in a new, I guess, in a major way. Like the format was either side scroller or like platformer or racing game, and there was a few things in between. But I think Super Mario RPG is one of the ones where it started to really establish Mario as a kind of all-purpose franchise. And by then or from then we had like sports titles, but Super Mario RPG for its like writing and humor and actual like RPG mechanics and world building, that kind of stuff, it's really, really beloved. And yeah, I think it holds up really. I don't know if you played the other kind of like Super Mario RPG like games, but they're also really good.
Paper Mario,
Paper Mario, like Bowser's Inside Story is one of my favorite ones. It's just like, I love that game so much. But like, yeah, it's a beloved game, and the fact that they're bringing it back and they're not just doing it like, hey, we put the sprites through one of these fucking filters and now everything's smudgy. And they clearly know how beloved this game is, and they are doing looks like they're doing right by it, which is going to be hopefully good. Yeah. It's a classic, but it is a cult classic. So I'm hoping that this will be a good opportunity for a lot of people to play it.
The fact that they kept Mario as like a weird little squatty, cute guy. Like, I like
Have you seen the Uppies GIF?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Like tiny little Mario. The funny thing about that GIF is everyone's like, Uppies, that's a grown man. That's a 40-year-old man. It's weird.
We went to Super Nintendo World.
We did.
We should mention it.
Oh, yes.
Where at the end of Summer Game Fest, we all got together. I was gonna say that's such a cool shit.
L for Luigi and L takes, which
that is a good shirt.
L takes,
L takes,
which we will get
the
to.
L's in skill.
But no, it was so fun. Oh my god.
Yeah, it was really good. Actually, I was blown away by that. It was fantastic. Yeah. So,
cried a little bit, just like a little tiny bit.
Yeah.
It's like a little.
Is that what
bit.
you were doing in the corner? Oh,
yeah. It was like
it's cool. I think it's definitely really, really cool if you have kids, because I mean, I don't know, I'm talking out of my ass, but it feels like very prime for kids to run around and interact with stuff.
Yes,
like that's what a lot of the whole thing is here, is just kind of like existing in this little area with all the mini games, all the little hidden things. You get the bracelet, you can collect coins. I forgot what they even do, but it's gamified, so you're collecting. Hooray. There's like an app. It's cool. It was very nice to just see all that stuff like kind of come to life in an odd way, and like just look around and hear the music and get all that. And then like a mannequin Mario and Luigi, not mannequin, mascot.
Yeah,
Mario and Luigi walk by, and that was kind of weird, but I wanted that job because, like, when you go to, so people, I don't know if they've ever been to like a theme park or like Chuck E. Cheese, like when the character comes out, there's usually handlers around the character kind of keeping the crowd back or helping the mascot in case it's like helmet falls off or whatever. And I really want to be like the Mario Secret Service of that. Like, I want to be like Luigi's bouncer.
Wait, who was telling me? Beth from the Vampire Survivors team was a Disney cast member, and she was telling me that apparently the way it goes is that if you are a character, you do it for a set amount of time, and then what happens is your promotion is you become the character's handler. And that's the kind of way that works. But also, like, apparently it's grueling to go through auditions for it.
Really?
So many. Can you imagine how many theater kids, and especially Disney adults, want to be those characters? Apparently, it's like...
And how ruthless they are when they're looking at you and being like, you don't look like Snow White.
I'm going to be wearing the
foot is longer than your right
I
foot.
see. I was thinking about the ones where you're just wearing a suit and it wouldn't matter. But I guess if you're like, you're sure, I get that.
Like your Cinderellas and
makes
your
sense.
Sleeping
You know how you
Beauties
win those
and-
auditions? Like you wear the helmet, like you put like, as like Beast from Beauty and the Beast, you put the helmet on, you just do a backflip. Auditions, that's how you win it. Just crush it.
I think my favorite...
I know someone who was Chewbacca. And he got it partly because
I just have a lot of hair. You don't need to.
No, and he got it because he's super tall, or like part of the reason why you have certain height requirements for different characters. So
my favorite memory from Nintendo World was when we were in the cafe eating food, and everyone was eating, and then the lights went down because there was the invasion, and everyone was like freaking out, like, "What's going on?" And then like the little like bullet bills would start appearing, and I'm like, "It's an invasion!" And the toads were running around being like, "Ah."
Yeah, you're
My
eating to
favorite
the
is
cries of Toad Village.
Toads,
Yeah.
Being ransacked.
Yeah.
My favorite one is the toad that just looks like depressed Ben Affleck, kind of going like, "Ugh, he's so done. This happens every 30 minutes." But no, it was really cool. The theming was awesome. I think the one gripe that I had is on the ride itself.
Yeah.
It felt very overcomplicated.
It did.
Oh my god.
To get, I mean, the theming stuff was so cool, like walking around and seeing all the stuff that they built, all the videos. They had this bookcase of fake books, and every single title was incredible. I took pictures of all
It
of
was
them.
like, why Mario sucks by Bowser. Like,
Yeah, it was like all stuff like that. It was so cool. But then when you got the actual ride, you have to put on a hat, and then you have to clip on a specific visor, and then it's this kind of AR thing beamed onto the visor. And for me, it didn't work because I think it's because I have an astigmatism. And so
Oh, that
for
was
me
my
on that
problem.
ride,
yeah.
I had to like keep one
Yeah.
eye shut the whole time just to see anything. So
That's
I'm really glad there wasn't a picture on that ride, because it would have been me just kind of going, eh?
I
There's
learned
so-
that the hard way the first time I went to press, and I have to angle it slightly so that I'm not looking directly through it. So that helps me.
There was so much going on the AR screen. I feel like I would love to go through it again and just look around and ignore that, because I
Yes.
ended up kind of
Yeah.
doing that because my eyes don't work right. Because like there's parts where you go into the different themed rooms and they built actual stuff like like when the mansion, and you see chandeliers swinging, and I'm like, oh, get this thing off my face. I want to see what they made. This is so
Yeah.
cool. They need also just like a regular old roller coaster. They need like Wario energy there. Like Wario's
Yes.
backwards roller
Yeah.
coaster where he's like, give me your money. Ah! And then you're just like,
I wish they were characters walking around.
Yeah,
Just,
true.
you know,
Wario.
Wario
But he would
and
just,
Waluigi.
create chaos and ruin people's days.
maybe they do that for like Halloween
pick up their
Horror
pick up their
Nights.
ice creams and throw them on the ground and
Stealing money
So-
from everyone. That'd be good.
Yep.
Other than that, it was so fun.
Yeah,
I
that was
had a great
that was
time.
good.
It was.
Any other thoughts on the Nintendo Direct before we get to?
No, it was pretty good.
Fantastic.
I'm excited. I'm
Pretty good.
keen for Nintendo stuff. They're
No
doing a
Hollow
good job.
Knight. That's fine.
No Hollow Knight.
No
Peaches,
Silk,
no.
no
Hollow
Silk
Knight.
Song.
After many years, Peach is getting another one of her own games.
Yeah,
Good
Yeah,
for
that's
Peach.
right.
Yeah,
that's right.
congratulations, Peach.
Seems
Yeah.
like she
Doing it for the
gets to be
Oh,
nice.
sisters.
Detective
As a-
Pikachu is back after seemingly almost being cancelled. Like everyone
Sure.
forgot about Detective Pikachu.
That's true.
Yeah. New amiibo. Pikmin is still coming out. I keep
Pikmin.
forgetting Pikmin's coming out.
Me too.
Oh,
Me
Luigi's
too.
Mansion. There's a Luigi's
Yes.
Mansion. Has been
Oh,
done.
Dark
that
Moon
would be
remastered.
remastered.
Mhm.
I'm
Yeah.
actually
Yeah.
really excited for that. I do. Yeah, Luigi's Mansion games are just such
So good.
beautifully constructed, wonderful, sort of tight, just so focused on what they're doing, and they're like a little movie experience.
They're all
almost.
little
They're just
Resident
like-
Evil ones.
Yeah,
Yeah.
actually, yeah, exactly. It's so rad. I love them.
The,
They're really
the
good.
other thing that I think isn't getting a lot of attention that could be really interesting is Penny's Big Breakaway, which is that platformer that was shown very briefly, but it's done by the Sonic Mania crew.
Oh,
yeah.
yes,
It's
yes.
the yo-yo looking character. It looks like Blinks with a yo-yo, which is unfortunate way, but like I think it's Christian Whitehead and the team
It
there.
is.
But like obviously,
Private division.
yeah, and Private Division publishing it, but obviously like the Sonic Mania team put out probably the best Sonic game
Yes.
maybe
Yeah.
ever. So like that's pretty exciting.
Yeah, super cool. All right, let's move on.
Yeah.
To one of the big releases of the last couple weeks. Brace yourselves,
Yeah.
boys. We're talking Final
Yeah.
Fantasy 16. So,
Beloved
wanna
game by
start?
all.
Yeah, do you guys like Spirits Within? I think that's a good way to like, let's just throw it all out here.
I actually did like Spirits
I remember
Within.
liking it at the time because
At
I
the
was like,
time.
"Whoa, look at the graphics!" But now,
Yeah, I
I'm sure
remember-
if I
I
go
remember
back,
watching
I'm like,
it.
"Whoa, this is terrible."
At the time, I remember watching it and going, I've never seen anything like this. And graphically,
Yes.
like I was blown away. And I want to keep that memory like that. And I don't want to revisit it, thank
Yeah.
you. But I'm a
Smart.
Kingdom Hearts liker, so what do I fucking know?
Yeah.
That's
Who
a
wants
good
to start?
that's a good way to like set things up. I think for
Yes.
me personally, I have a tolerance for Final Fantasy games, even like newer ones, where there are always going to be weird, bizarre elements, and it may not always come together right. But I think I just like being in the Final Fantasy mentality so much that it kind of kind of clouds my judgment. I think 16 is extremely flawed, but fun. What? Why are you laughing?
When you said clouds,
my judgment, and at least you went.
Oh, Cloud like the man.
Yeah, like the man.
Just like the man with the big sword.
Yeah, I think it definitely has a. So I'm glad people are loving it, and I know it's always going to be people's first Final Fantasy, and that's always going to be significant to people. One of my favorite first big exposures to it, where I like really went all in, was I played 7, but then 10 was my big one, and then like I went online, and people were like, "You like 10?" So it's always going to be like that. It's like poetry. It rhymes. It's always going to be like a thing. So I think 16 is weird, but I still kind of like it. But I think I see people thinking like it's the best game ever. They haven't gotten through it all yet.
That's the thing, because I haven't finished it yet, and I'm still very much in love with it.
Okay.
But also, I am not. First of all, I'm not necessarily hung up on like older Final Fantasies, because I came into the franchise pretty late, like 12. And even then, I didn't play 13. I dabbled in 14, played 15. And like I said, I'm a Kingdom Hearts liker. I think there needs to be a phrase for not a suspension of disbelief, but a suspension of things when you're playing a Final Fantasy game. Because like Jake said, I like being in that world. I love the earnestness. I like the vibes. But there needs to be some kind of phrase for it. So I'm opening up to you, our lovely users, to see what it's like.
Final
like
fuckery.
A suspension of...
is what it has. That's like, so 15, like I'll lay it all out right now. I really, really like 15. I absolutely understand the criticisms, and the base game, I finished it and I was like, what happened? What was that? What did I just play? But I liked it. I was intrigued the whole way.
Yep.
Yeah. Those boys, man.
Yeah, I liked in the end, because I like played 15 well after launch, and I was like, this definitely sucks. There's no doubt about it, right? It's like it definitely does. But at the same time, it just has these things that really ping, and that, you know, there's a chance they connect with you. But I also think that 15 was quite an ambitious title when you think about it in many aspects, because it was the game to make that jump to an open world, to an open world thing. I don't think that worked, because you could really see what they were doing with that. And you could see what they were doing with that kind of ensemble cast of the 4 bros and the style of storytelling that was going on there. They obviously had that entirely new combat system as well. You know, just the same way that Final Fantasy XVI does. But I mean, I think that was quite an ambitious game on many fronts. And I guess this is sort of just leading into my criticisms of Final Fantasy XVI. Like, I think that was really trying to say, what is Final Fantasy XVI? What is Final Fantasy? What are its core elements? And then how do we take those to the next level? And I think Final Fantasy XVI sort of says, like, we've got a combat system, we've got some cutscenes, and it wasn't really focused on anything else. It wasn't trying to be ambitious with its RPG systems. It wasn't trying to be ambitious with its like open world design and the way to approach things and side quests and whatever. It was trying to be ambitious with its massive spectacle moments and its combat. And those things, they worked for sure. And I think people have different opinions on how good that combat is and its longevity and depth and whatever else. But I don't think anyone can question the highs that this game gets to and just how high they are. Like, they are fucking wild and crazy.
Unbelievable.
Totally. And I think that it's coming back to what I said earlier, which is like, there are going to be some things with Final Fantasy 16 that might ping with you, and then and they're enough. And they're just like, that's enough for me to really love this game, just like it was with Final Fantasy 15, even though they're both flawed in many ways. But I think the difference for me personally is that I think Final Fantasy 15 was trying to do a lot of different things and trying to do it while still sort of remaining. Like, a lot of the RPG stuff was consistent and the approach to exploration was consistent. It was trying to push into those spaces, whereas Final Fantasy 16 just wasn't interested in that. It's like, no, we are doing 2 things here. We are doing combat and cutscenes, and that's it. And so for that reason, I found it less interesting and less ambitious than previous Final Fantasy games. And I guess that was one of my bigger challenges with it. So I
think it struggled with a sort of kind of maybe it's almost like they had the, like, okay, the spectacle, the combat, And then they're like, oh, well, like you still need to like walk around and do stuff. Because that's what you do in Final Fantasy games. You're going to walk around and do stuff. You're going to say hello to a chocobo. You're going to go weird diversions. And I think that it kind of struggles under that more than anything because it's like a pacing thing. I think this might be almost like a critic thing or a reviewer thing where maybe it's better enjoyed in small bites because some of those things you do in between the big moments in the game just really bored me. Totally. I think that also might also just be a testament to how crazy the highs are, where it's like any sort of come down from that is just, it's like a Sora's Wrath. Like there are parts of it that I was like, am I playing a Sora's Wrath? This is wild. It's a, and I use this phrase a lot. It's an overused phrase like identity crisis, but it certainly has some of that. And crisis reference. Sorry.
I don't think it's an identity crisis at all. Like, I think this is exactly what they intended because it's exactly what they needed. And maybe this is speculative, but I think this is their come to Jesus or I don't know, come to Genova moment where it's like they reached the point where they understood. It goes back to like the cost of making games for me. I feel like that they understood that they can no longer make Final Fantasy games in the mainline franchise on the scale and with the core expectations of what they have been any longer, whilst also putting them in a genre that doesn't have the broadest attraction. And I understand that that's kind of like the heart of what the franchise is, and that is being lost. And I feel like right now that what they're trying to do is they're creating these multiple lanes for Final Fantasy to exist in. I feel like the stuff that we want out of it, which is everything that like Ralph, you mentioned in your review, and Jake, you said as well, is all stuff that I agree with. Like, I feel like the side quests are so boring, but like they usually have some element of like story or narrative or character building that I'm like, okay, that'll do. I think the itemization is terrible. I think like the world is empty and barren in a lot of ways. I think all that stuff is now contained in the offshoot, which is a remake, which is the Final Fantasy VII remakes. I wouldn't be surprised, although I wouldn't stake my life on it, if they started remaking more of those Final Fantasy games and use the hybrid method for that. Like, and I think the other games will be more of the tricky prospect because like remaking 8 is going to be a bit of a nightmare because I love that game to death, but it is a clusterfuck of a game. Like it is mad. And same with like 9 and maybe even like 10's the next one they remake because they can build that hybrid system and make it work really well. But for them to spend the time and money and effort and marketing on a new mainline Final Fantasy game and have the like cutting edge graphics, because that's one of the core principles of Final Fantasy. It needs to be the best looking game on the market. They always have been, whether that's in actual gameplay or like FMV cutscenes or whatever it may be. They were always ahead of the pack. And if they still want to do that stuff, they can't do it in a gameplay format that is fallen out of favor in a major way. And I feel like that's kind of it where they're at now.
But I feel like a lot of, because I've definitely heard similar criticisms to that, and I feel like a lot of that discussion is kind of mischaracterizing a lot of, certainly what I'm saying, and I know what a lot of other people are saying, because I don't think anyone's saying this game should have been turn-based, you know? And I don't think it's saying it should have been a more traditional JRPG. What I'm sort of saying that I think this is just quite an outdated package in general. You know, if you look at contemporary open world, semi-open world action games, like even you look at your Horizons and your God of Wars and whatever, like they have found a way to tell their stories better through gameplay, and they have more interesting, compelling RPG systems than Final Fantasy was able to deliver. They have a more interesting approach to world design, right? And I think that if you'd have taken a lot of those principles that prop up a lot of those sorts of like, let's call them Sony games or whatever, and you bolted them onto this package, I actually think I would have really fucking loved this. For me, it was never about like, I don't want this to be an action game. It was like, well, I kind of want it to be just a more interesting action game, like a deeper action game, a game that feels more contemporary, you know what I mean? And I definitely got a lot of that criticism come at me like, oh, you just don't want the series to change, or you just want it to be a JRPG. And I'm like, that's never what I've been personally saying, and I know that's not what a lot of other people are saying as well. So yeah,
I kind of do just want it to be an RPG, which is the weird thing. Like I
sure.
also feel like it's definitely for everything I said, and I think it's a new version. I feel like it's also not a good execution on what this could have been, as you said. Like I feel like this is I feel like this is the first step to a better Final Fantasy, a new version of Final Fantasy, which is a shame because you'd expect a team of that caliber to execute way better on a way higher and be more ambitious. But then I also think about like where that team, Final Fantasy as a kind of development studio team, that kind of stuff, it's been passed around. And let's not forget the last mainline entry was salvaging a version of a different game versus and like Business Unit 3 they're the MMO team that has been kind of tasked to put in. So I feel like, not to, discredit their abilities, but also it feels like a kind of MMO in a lot of ways. And I think that's why we're at that. I just don't see the confidence in the team to execute on the stuff that we want. Maybe the next one, if they're given another chance at it, or another team that takes that foundation, will have that stuff that we're missing, where it's like a few more characters that are memorable, good writing in the main quest, the story quest, side quest, sorry. And then I hit up Michael Hyam, who reviewed it for us, like 10 hours in, and I was like, am I going to get a new sword ever? What's going on? Like, is anything happening? Like, will I be able to find an Ultima weapon? Or like, am I going to fight a Ruby weapon? Will I ever find a random cave to stumble into? And he was like, nah, not really, man.
No, not really.
And like, that is the stuff that I miss a lot from it. And the hope is like, either this serves as a framework for another team to come along and be like, this is what we're going to inject that stuff back in. Or this serves as a good starting point for this team to build the confidence and come back and do it again. But I think I'm where you guys are at, where I get it. I like the game a lot, but I also am pushing aside a lot of the things I love about Final Fantasy to like it.
But that's the thing, because I don't care about the RPG system, because I think for me the highs are so good, the combat is so fun that I don't want to be faffing around in menus. And I say that as a big RPG player. For me, the balance with Final Fantasy XVI is that I'm just enjoying hitting things with my sword and flying around and having all those powers and doing that. Totally agreed on the side quest stuff. My, heart visibly drops every time I see a green icon on the screen that doesn't have a plus sign in it, but I'm still doing all of them. I haven't finished it yet, so comments on the story for me are going to be that I really like what they're doing with it. I find it very interesting. I love, like, Benedicta, Sid, oh my god, Clive. Like, I love genuinely the cast and the characters. And so for me as well, even the fact that it's not truly open world, the way that they're sort of doing the Dragon Age Inquisition map thing of hub worlds and stuff, doesn't bother me so much, because I am so overwhelmed lately with games that have to be big and it has to have everything that you could possibly want to do. This game is going to offer you. And so for me, Final Fantasy XVI is a game that is somehow managing to balance these overwhelming, incredible moments, these huge, impressive boss fights, but then also is big enough that I don't feel like I'm being shortchanged or cheapened on the experience, but it's also showing restraint. And for me, this is just how I'm feeling about games in general at the moment. It's like, I actually really appreciate it for that.
Yeah, no, I definitely have heard that as well. And I know a lot of people feel the same way about that. Personally, I definitely feel the same in many regards in terms of like how I approach games, is that I don't want every game to be a massive open world game. But I guess I look at what they do have and I'm like, well, it's just, it's smaller, sure, but I just don't think it's working. I don't think it's very good. It's kind of like the fact that it's smaller isn't saving it for me when I know that there's just nothing out there to see. You know what I mean? Because like if you're going to do it right, rather than... And I also saw this comment. I don't even remember where I heard it or saw it, but I was like, I think it was on Reddit or something. Someone said like,
well, that was your first mistake.
Yeah. But it was like, imagine if this game was like half as long, cut out all the filler, and it was just a straight up like linear action game that just went through and did its thing and 100% committed to those things. I reckon that would be a fucking great game. Like
that would be killer. Yeah.
Totally. And I think one of the things that has created the divisive or the controversy around this game, or why it's less universally acclaimed, is because it is trying to reach out and do all of the things at once and just kind of like gesture towards those things without committing to them. Versus if this was like, Stranger in Paradise-esque, kind of with that singular focus, you might have had a product that I think came together in a more complete sense. Didn't feel like it had so many gaping holes in it,
Yeah.
But I think sorry, Jake,
especially with the combat. So the combat is one example. I like it. I enjoy it. It's fun. It fulfills the power fantasy thing. And I know I'm like bagging on the game a lot. It's an interesting conversation. Ultimately, I still like the game. But the combat is one example where I was like, oh, cool. Like when I talked to you, when you went to preview the game and, who's behind the combat with like Devil May Cry design philosophy here and there. Like I was hoping for something a little bit more precise and a little bit more crazy. I don't know. Something about it where it just kind of doesn't feel, I don't know. It's hard. It doesn't feel 100%. It feels like 90%. And with something like Final Fantasy, with that being the core gameplay, I was hoping for a little more. I like that you can do basically the stinger attack, like Dante's like stinger. I was like, okay, that's fine. That's good.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was just looking for a little more.
Yeah, I'm like having so much fun like figuring stuff out and setting up traps and grabbing enemies and moving them around and doing all the Devil May Cry stuff. So
it's fun to switch on the fly. It's very good.
What a bizarre default layout for those controls.
In what way?
Like I changed it after about an hour because I just couldn't cope with it anymore. It was just very weird. Like I don't know. What was it? What was the block? Was
it the dodge?
R1 is the dodge.
Oh, dodge was a dodge. And I was just like, I cannot get around that. So I changed it immediately.
Interesting, okay.
This is one
I've had a lot of people who have talked to you have been like, button layout's weird.
I did this is one game where I have been using the DualSense Edge and it's been very, very effective for me.
Me too, actually.
It's
Me too.
so
Exactly
good.
right.
Like having the charge attacks on the paddles has been a game changer for me.
Totally
like
agree.
It's huge.
Totally agree. Yeah, I agree.
Too bad the battery life is 1.5 hours.
Yeah,
That's
it's so
the thing.
bad. It's so bad.
I would love to get a fucking. It sounds like a sex toy, man. What are they doing? DualSense Edge? Are you
Hell
joking?
Yeah. Hadn't thought about that, but absolutely.
Paddle for your pleasure.
Get that on adamandeve.com. I would love to get one, but yeah, battery life I cannot justify. And also, I've said this on this podcast many times that the DualSense in general just makes my hand cramp up.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. I love the DualSense.
And so that's why I wish, I don't know what it is, but like the Xbox Elite controller for me is just right. It's the Goldilocks.
There's like
more
controller.
fanboyism, more
There's
console
like a weird-
wars.
Oh,
by
here we
Lucy.
go.
Oh, here we go.
I've been playing a bunch of it and like
Xbox.
my RSI has been killing.
No way.
controllers.
Wow.
Yeah.
I think
that's
it's
part
the
of the reason I had
shape
to
of it.
change.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think where it does succeed is I like the world. I actually like some of the side quests bum me out because they weren't as in depth as I was hoping. Because like every time I got
Except
to
for
a
that
new
wolf
environment,
one.
I was what?
What the hell was that wolf one?
Yeah, the wolf one was a highlight.
Oh,
That was
God.
a
Yeah, I was
highlight.
so dark.
For anyone doesn't, a brief
messed
primer
up.
on that is that Clive discovers that a lordling is luring slaves to go and be killed by a wolf to entertain his son. And then Clive needs to figure out what he might do about that. Spoiler
It's
alert,
like-
he doesn't do much about it. So
Well,
they get their
no,
comeuppance.
he does.
yeah, but Clive
Oh, well,
does not
he-
do that. It's the other guy
Yeah.
that makes it happen. Clive's like,
Oh,
yes,
yes, you're
continue
right.
about your business. Please
Yeah.
continue murdering innocent people. I'm going to go and do other things now, you know?
It's like the one person who was writing that quest was like just an hour before read the Wikipedia page on Joffrey and was like, oh,
Yes,
interesting.
the guy's voice even sounds like it. Little kid sounds like Joffrey. He does. Oh, man.
I like Clive. I like I like the way this story is presented. Granted, it gets kind of messy, but I love a game that just is not afraid to throw me cool cutscenes and let me just kind of like sink in that. I think Clive is very interesting. There's a lot to him. He almost looks too cool for a Final Fantasy protagonist.
Yes.
What?
Did you see like when he got his get up?
I was like,
see,
whoa.
like-
Oh,
Yeah.
Whoa, dude.
I was like, he's dressed like Dracula now, and then I couldn't unsee it after that. I was the rest of the game.
My god!
He does look like
he's dressed like Dracula.
He does look like Lords of Shadow.
Yes,
It does. Yeah. I love that. I love Clive. Yeah. I love like the relationship. Oh, this messed me up. I've been really struggling to place Jill's actor, and that's the case because there were a lot of like very infamous, famous British actors in this. She's the main female lead, Jenny, from Alan Partridge. This Time with Alan Partridge, and that messed me up. That's a very British reference, and
the young version of her is played by what's her name? We did Amicia.
Charlotte McBurney.
Yeah, Charlotte McBurney.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
And young Joshua's played by the kid who played Hugo, right?
Hugo, yeah.
Amazing. Yeah, right. Yeah. Cool. That's so awesome.
I think Viserys from Game of Thrones is in there as well somewhere. I think
it's a really I feel like the acting is excellent, I think, for the most part. And also like one of the things I will give props to, it's not written like a Final Fantasy game, like a traditional Final Fantasy. It's closer to the MMO, I think.
I think that's true of the first half. I don't agree with the second half. I
think
the second half is written like a Final Fantasy game.
Yes, there's a bit where it goes, we are Kingdom Hearts now. And you're like, okay, cool. But like...
people are going to be so mad in the comment section about that. Just to be clear, Kingdom Hearts, everyone's like, Kingdom Hearts nonsense is Final Fantasy nonsense and vice versa.
It is, I get it.
I'm saying nothing.
I will say, as a Kingdom Hearts liker, I've reviewed that game. I love Kingdom Hearts. The writing is... the highest order of dog shit I've ever seen.
Nonsensical.
Please, you're a guest on our podcast. Please do not ruin our luck ratios.
Do not come for my friends. Come for me. I gave Kingdom Hearts 3 an 8 out of 10. I know what makes Kingdom Hearts good. That writing is atrocious.
Oh my god! I'm already terrified of the clips on Twitter. I've already been through it so much this week.
Look what you're doing,
Ralph,
to
I'm
him.
redirecting the anger away from you now. So like people will be mad at me instead of you.
Oh man, actually, I do have some interesting questions that I think is kind of shaken out of this, because obviously, if anyone doesn't know, my review went up. It was definitely a rocky reception to my review.
It was a great review, by the way. I thought it was fantastic.
Thank you. Because I think, which I knew it would be in the sense that, like I knew I had a minority opinion on it. I also know how much people like Final Fantasy. And, this is what happens with these sorts of games when you hold an outside opinion. Totally fine. And whatever, that's all good. My question, though, is just I'm interested to talk through some of the feedback that I got about my review and then like put it to you guys as questions, because I think it's really interesting to talk about how we all approach the process of reviewing video games. And that is one of the big things. Sorry. One of the big things question that I got was just like, is it fair to bring your expectations of a franchise into a review of a new entry? Because a lot of people were like, hey man, you didn't like this because you wanted it to be something else, or you were comparing it to previous Final Fantasy games, whereas your job as a reviewer is just to review the game in front of you without any of those expectations or whatever. So I have my own thoughts on that, but I thought I might throw it to you guys and see, what do you guys think about that idea? Is it okay to bring expectations about a franchise when you were reviewing the 16th entry of it?
Well, yeah, I mean, that and a related question is, do you get a franchise novice or a franchise expert in?
Interesting. Yeah, for sure. That's an also interesting angle on it. Absolutely.
Yeah, I can't help but bring expectations in, and I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing, as long as you go in with an open mind. I always default back to like be a comic book reader, where I think some comic book readers can be very open to new interpretations, remixes of characters, changing of the core pillars of those characters, and there's potential for fun. And I think a game series, especially one specifically like Final Fantasy, where every single one is completely different and someone can jump in, I still can't help but just like look for and enjoy seeing some of those hallmarks and stuff here and there. And knowing, again, trying to go in with an open mind as possible, knowing that some of those things aren't always going to pop up, and being okay with that and celebrating the parts that are. If that makes sense. I also haven't had coffee today and I'm still moving. So I'm like living out of boxes. So my brain doesn't work.
Your hair looks incredible, at least.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, I think there needs to be a kind of like a distinction made between expectation and context, which is kind of key in a lot of ways, but it's also kind of subtle. I feel like in your review, there are times when you're definitely talking about your expectations, but there are also just as many times where you're talking about the context. And when it comes to the context of Final Fantasy as a franchise, I feel like it's important to have that, because if it's just like, I wanted this game to be like this, then it's bad. But if you're like, I would have liked to seen this because it's part of the franchise in a meaningful way, and beyond that, it's part of the genre in a lot of ways. I feel like also, if it didn't try to do some of the things that create the expectations, then it's an issue. If it's like, we're not going to try to do RPG stuff, we're just going to make a character action game, if then someone comes along and is like, well, this has got no RPG stuff in it, then you've got a problem. However, if it's got item unlocks and all the items are shit, then you have gone halfway to the point of saying, we're doing this RPG thing, thus any further criticism by extension of that mechanic and its execution is valid, as is bringing in the context of how it's executed within the franchise prior to it, and also within the genre as a whole.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. I think that's a good way to put it, actually. So, I don't know, Liz, what do you think?
I think Tam's point about context is incredibly important. But I think as well, bringing expectations about a franchise, at the end of the day, it's a piece of media that it's marketed towards us. You bring expectations in to everything regardless, like based on what you have been exposed to, whether it's you watched a trailer, you watched the gameplay, you played a demo, or you have a storied history with the franchise. Like, the expectation is not something that can be clinically removed, I don't think.
Yeah, exactly. I agree.
And one other thing that I was going to briefly mention is we're in the media, we're constantly I've seen it happen a lot, and even I'm someone who does it a lot, and I try and enforce it in my reviews, is don't backseat game design. Don't try and tell developers how to make the game by saying, you should have done this instead. However, I feel like that's not a hard and fast rule, because if you're just not if you're not providing feedback, what is the point of a review to a degree, right? A review partially for us is we want to tell, we want to explore how we feel about it. We want to clue people in on, who might be buying it, on whether they should or not. But there is also a small element of, we're also kind of talking to the developers, right? There is a dialogue there. I write my reviews in a way that I hope that the reviewers, the people that make the game, are reading it and they can take something away from it. Whether that's, I love your game because you did this and this and this and this, or I didn't quite click with your game because you didn't do this. I think it's important to not create such a hard and fast rule around don't backseat game. Perhaps don't backseat game design, but offer feedback and provide some reasoning and rationale and kind of explain why you had this kind of perspective. I think that's super important. And as a bunch of people who critique and analyze games, I think it's as important to do that and provide that feedback to developers, because it helps them as well, right?
Yeah, I agree. And I saw on Twitter who's the guy that wrote Barry?
Who wrote Barry?
that TV show that's doing the rounds?
Yeah.
Whatever.
Bill Hader?
Yeah, him. Yeah, him, right? He was just talking about writing, and there's this clip of him being like, when it comes to getting feedback from people, you should listen to the things that they don't like and that aren't working for them, but then you turn off your brain when they start giving you suggestions on how to fix it. So they made something, they say something like, oh, I don't like the relationship between the husband and the wife. It should actually be like this, and the husband should say this, or the wife should do that. You should be listening to the first half of that, which is, I don't like the relationship between the husband and the wife. But the second half is irrelevant. You need to figure that out for yourself as the creator and whatever. And so I definitely agree with that as well. And that was actually retweeted, I think, by a game developer who was saying the same, this applies to game dev. And I have long believed the idea that we don't really we have very few good solutions for how to improve the problems we have with games. I also recognize that in myself inherently, that my brain is actually quite good at figuring out what doesn't work, but I have so little creative capacity. I have zero original ideas in my brain, none. Okay. So, but at the same time, I also really agree with what Tam said, which is that like I do sometimes suggest, hey, what about this thing? And, you know, like, for example, with the combat with Final Fantasy 16, I was like, wouldn't it have been cool if, you know, your party members could have also like junctioned some icons and you could switch to them, and like it would have changed the game surely, but it would have meant you're using more of the combat system all at once, and blah, blah, blah. But surely there would have been quite a few design flow and impacts that the team maybe looked at some point and they said, no, that's not what we want to do for X, Y, and Z reason.
I love that idea, by the way. I thought that was a fucking great idea, especially because like you press a button and toggle will do stuff. Like
totally.
why don't you do the same thing and keep the interaction simple and just assign them to a button and have that ability, because you are just doing shortcut abilities, right? 2 button presses, you're good.
Yeah. So, but either way, like so while I still have those thoughts, and I definitely put them out there sometimes in reviews, I also am cognizant of the fact that the suggestions that we have to improve things are usually bad suggestions, and they're not cognizant of all of the realities that those developers face in terms of their constraints, but also the fact that they probably have play tested some of the ideas that we present, and they're like, no, we tested that and it didn't work for these 5 reasons that you couldn't possibly think of, you know? So yeah, I think that's interesting. I think one of the other questions or pieces of feedback that I got about my review was like, oh, you complained about X, Y, and Z in Final Fantasy 16, but you didn't complain about it in Final Fantasy VII Remake when those same sorts of things exist. So how do you account for that inconsistency? You are being inconsistent as a reviewer. How do you guys feel about the question of our need to be consistent across different points of criticism when it comes to games? I have my own thoughts for how I approach that. I don't agree with the premise of that question in a way, but I don't know how you guys feel about that or how you approach that issue when it comes to reviewing things. Does my question make sense, firstly?
Yes.
Can you give me an example?
Like, for example, let's say side quests not being particularly interesting. Yeah, sure, they're not particularly interesting in Final Fantasy VII Remake either. And they're like, well, why didn't you complain about that more in that game? Or the linearity of environments. Again, Final Fantasy VII Remake has quite linear environments when you really look at it and break it down. It's like, well, why don't you ping that game for that? Whereas, you know, you complained about it in 16. And I mean, look, go on.
I think it's, at least in my opinion, like I'm pretty freewheeling with that stuff. I think if you get caught up in making sure that you assess one thing exactly the way you assess something else, you start getting caught in the weeds and stumbling over your words, and then it gives you less confidence in how you're speaking about things. I always have to be very careful about that because I'm just like not a confident person. So I'm very like hyper aware of stuff like that. But then there's always like, it's important because there's always so much more than just, oh, if you said this thing about this game, why wouldn't you say it about this game? Even the example you just cited, Final Fantasy 16 to 17 side quests, there's so much in between that can explain why they would be different. So to get hung up on like, well, you gave this game a 7 and you gave this one an 8, like that type of stuff, I think it's not worth it.
Yeah, at some point, like when you're writing a review, do you have to go back to everything other review wrote and cross-reference it? Like, I think it's a pretty silly way to approach it, but also like it doesn't account for like so many different factors that I would disagree and say that, yeah, the kind of some of the side quests in Final Fantasy VII Remake aren't as exciting on paper, but how they're used in the broader scope of the game is quite a bit more effective than the way they are used in Final Fantasy 16. In Final Fantasy 16, they almost feel inserted, and they don't have much of a impact on Clive as a person. They have some small kind of nuggets of information that help you understand stuff about, you know, dominance or you know, the world around you. Whereas I feel like a lot of even the most throwaway quests in Final Fantasy 7, they kind of very slowly break down the wall around Cloud. And like he is doing these menial tasks, but it's almost written in a way that it acknowledges these tasks are menial. And eventually you get to the point where you realize that these people, there's that point where everyone goes, oh, you're that guy who's doing all these menial tasks for everyone. You're cool. I like you. Thanks for doing that. And you're like, oh shit, this gruff kind of like person who's built a wall around himself by doing this nonsense has started to build a community around himself. There's nothing like that for Clive in 16. He's just doing these tasks for the sake of doing them. It's busy work, and maybe you get
renown.
You get renown,
agree.
I guess, but like I don't feel it has as much of a meaningful impact on Clive as a character. Towards the end, I've heard it does build into something. But there were points where, as I was going along, like there's that one where you help those kids and they've all, in Final Fantasy VII Remake, and then you come back an hour later and they've all got cardboard Buster Swords on. And you're like, oh, I had a noticeable impact on these kids. Sure. There's nothing quite like that. There's like, oh, you're that guy who saved me when my chocobos were under attack. It's like, all right, man, I don't remember that myself, but I take your word for it. But yeah, I just feel like you can't be consistent. Things change, and, our reads on things change different, and we as people, our tolerance for certain things can also change. Like I might be okay with Final Fantasy VII boring side quests back then, but now I'm just like I've had too much of this. The world is like changed in a way where there's too much of these like time wasting quests, so I'm going to be a little more harsher towards them.
Totally.
And I also think there's so many things in games that can pull your attention in different ways, where it's like there's one game that had terrible graphics, but I barely even mentioned them because there were so many other elements that I was more excited to talk about or evaluate. And then, you can't look at that and be like, oh, well, this game you did a deep dive on the graphics. Like there's at least how I approach things. I don't have a checklist. I'm not going through doing like graphics, sound, fun factor, like stuff like that. So I've always been like a go by feel type of thing.
I agree. Yeah, I think that's like, for me, that's the response to that is it's like, starting point for a review is not let's break up a game to its components and assess them. The starting point for a review is, how do I feel about this video game? Like that's it. And then after that, things flow from that. It's like, well, am I bored? Why am I bored? Well, I'm bored because, the side quests are boring. Okay, that's one thing. I'm bored because the itemization isn't working for me. Okay, that's another thing. And it's kind of like you just build out from that. You're trying to understand why that feeling exists. But if you go to a different game and you're having a really fantastic time with it, the way that you begin advancing that argument of trying to understand that feeling is going to lead you to different places and lead you to different, like focusing on different things versus others. Hello, Peanut, how you doing?
Oh my God,
dude, right?
A loud cat.
Really hungry.
Well, she's been yelling down there, so I picked her up.
Yeah, but that is going to necessitate a different approach to the same thing. It's like watching a movie and being like, there's too many car chases in this movie, and you also like Mad Max Fury Road, which is like a 2-hour car chase. Do you know what I mean? Like you just have different responses to different things at different times. But again, it's for me personally, as I review something, it's not about, I need to be mechanically consistent across these points. It's really about, I just need to explain why I'm feeling what I'm feeling. And that is naturally going to create some inconsistencies with how you talk about things, I think. So yeah. That's
and credit to some folks that do like to break down game reviews systematically. There's an audience for that. There's a place for that. Some people do it very, very well. So but me, absolutely. I just kind of go, hey man, I don't know. It's good.
Vibes.
I have a vibe-based critic.
Totally. So I guess like one of the questions is just finished, like Final Fantasy, because I think Tam as well, you said like this is a template for how Final Fantasy can move forward. Okay. I think, well, this is one template. The other template is like what you're seeing in Final Fantasy VII Remake. And my question to you guys is, if you were to have, if there was one choice and the mainline Final Fantasy series is going to go in one direction, would you like it to follow where Final Fantasy VII Remake is going? Or would you like it to follow this path?
I would take the remake approach. That's my preferred approach as an I prefer, my favorite Final Fantasy games are obviously going to be the older stand-in-place, like turn-based games. But if needs to be an evolution of them, I like where Final Fantasy VII Remake goes. I feel like I would prefer if this character action style game was an offshoot rather than the main games. But, I'm not in charge.
If there was a hybrid that was... So I prefer 7 Remake. I like how they cracked the code with the battle system. For me, it's the main thing you're doing, combat, battling, and I just happen to like how they did that better. But if there was a game moving forward that had the combat system of 7 Remake, but with the over-the-top insane cutscenes and QTEs, that would be like the ideal game for me. And
totally.
I think it definitely has potential whichever way they move forward. And I almost think there are other franchises experiencing the same thing, especially like as me, a fan caught in the middle, like Resident Evil. It's like, okay, are we doing like a first person thing, or are we going back to third person over the shoulder? And they're approaching two different angles, but they're getting at that point as well, where it's like, okay, what happens next? There has to be some sort of come together. And with Final Fantasy, I don't know. I would like to see the 7 remake combat system move forward, but also build upon that and change that, because there is still that thing that every Final Fantasy game does that I like, where they try something new. They do a weird thing. They change the battle system. They try and build on like, oh, what if it's turn-based, but like kind of turn-based? Or what if it's a skill tree, but it's a sphere? Like they always are trying to at least rethink something. So either way, they could start with one of those things and continue to rethink and iterate on it. I just prefer the 7 remake one.
Sure. How about you, Liz?
Hybrid of what Jake just mentioned, I
Right.
think. Because I think I don't have enough reverence for the older Final Fantasies. So for me, I'm just kind of, again, vibes-based, enjoying what I have played of 16 so far, which is well over half of the game. But I also really, really enjoyed 7. And I think there are certainly parts of both games I could cherry pick to augment my pre-order, so to speak, and make the perfect game for me. Augment my pre-order is something that lives in my head. I still can't believe that was an actual thing that they tried to do. But you know, like there are certain bits of it that I would love to see coalesce and come together, and just I think side quests are the real bad shit in both. Like eliminate them, get rid.
Ooh, no more side quests in a Final Fantasy game. Not with you on that, Lucy.
No more crap side quests.
Ooh, okay. No more crap quests in video games, full stop. Good luck with that. That is a bold ambition.
Let's
go one step further and say no more bad video games. Let's just do that.
Bold.
That is, I like it. You heard it here first on the Fans Per Second podcast. Our radical proposal, no more bad video games.
No more bad video games. Tam, did you answer that one?
I did answer that one, yeah.
Oh, you did? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I have a very boring voice, so I'm not surprised.
No, I'm sorry. I was dealing with my terrible child who was hissing at me.
I have a question for you
today,
guys, just in terms of broad 16 discussion. The whole Game of Thrones comparison and it being very, very clearly inspired by Game of Thrones. As someone who's not like super into Game of Thrones but knows a little bit, I could see it here and there, but it's not something that bothered me. Does it bother you guys with more experience with the franchise?
No.
As Tam and I used to have to break down Game of Thrones every week.
Oh yeah,
for a very successful video.
Oh, you think Reddit people are mad at you? Damn.
Yeah.
You want to try breaking down Game of Thrones?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
No,
criticizing Game of Thrones was
a risky business back then.
Risky business.
Up until those later seasons, then it got cool.
Well, yeah, we started doing it in season 6.
Yeah, right. So.
I don't find it egregious, but I think that is because I read a lot of fantasy. And so everyone is obviously going to pull the Game of Thrones comparison, Song of Ice and Fire comparison, but I like fantasy and I also like British history.
Sure.
So I'm just like, oh, yeah, you're just doing this thing or doing that thing, and you've pulled inspiration from here. I think it's fair to call out Game of Thrones, but for me, it's just something the thing that leaps out at me is when I'm playing is like, oh, this is British as hell.
Yeah.
And that's where I'm enjoying it. And like the thing about Game of Thrones is as well is that it tarnished its own reputation so incredibly, and not in a good way. I'm using the word incredible, but that I pretend that I do not see it.
It's because it was created by a guy from New Jersey. And that's
where
George Martin's from New Jersey.
George Railroad Martin is from New Jersey. Yeah.
No way.
Yeah,
Fuck off.
he's
That's
like a Joey bag of donuts, which is
nothing,
hilarious.
Nothing good has ever come out of Jersey. That's a total lie.
That's not true.
The Sopranos.
I will not hear bad words.
That's not from
George
Jersey. It's set in Jersey.
I say that with respect. I live right next door. All right.
That's right.
New Jersey has
exactly.
the best hot dogs.
He likes my
I went to
Elden
a
Ring
really nice
review.
Italian restaurant there. Oh yeah, he did like your Elden. He wrote about your Elden Ring.
He reviewed my Elden Ring review.
Did he?
He did.
That's cool. That's great.
Did you put that on your visa stuff?
Oh shit! I should do that. That's
Get that
a good reminder.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
What was I going to say? Shit. What were we just talking about?
Oh,
yeah.
George,
I feel like the writing in aping Game of Thrones, the writing in Final Fantasy is improved. It's less cringe than a lot of recent Final Fantasy, especially the last one. There were parts of the last one I was like, God, who's writing this?
Or 13? You mean?
15. The lads on
sorry,
tour.
I totally forgot about 15 for a second.
Yeah,
Yes, of
lads
course.
on tour. Like a lot of the Final Fantasy, and like part of it is like what I love about it is the cringe, but like clearly they've like the inspiration has taken, and also they've got like some incredible localization with Koji Fox and crew.
Yes.
So like I feel like the Game of Thrones stuff has definitely elevated it to a degree, but also the setup for this entire game is Naruto, and I will not hear anything different.
And crossed with Attack on Titan.
Yes,
I am extremely disappointed that there is no cup noodle crossover. Firstly, I want to make
Yeah.
that point.
Devastating.
And I'm really
No
hoping
cup
that
noodle,
comes in DLC.
no Prada, no Gucci,
It's so
nothing.
disappointed.
Yeah.
Really dropped the ball, Square Enix. And the last thing I will say is that the one takeaway that I have from this game, more than anything else, is I'm so bummed that Dion was not a BFF party member from the start, because he fucking rules, and it would be awesome if he was your boy all the way through, and it's like ride or die, and he was a party member and you were fighting alongside him. It would be incredible. And I'm just, every time I saw him in more cutscenes, it made me more and more sad that he was not, that they treated him the way that they did. That's not a spoiler, by the way. The point is, he's just always very distant from Clive, and if they were like road tripping together doing their thing, this game would have been an absolute fucking banger.
Agreed.
For real.
Agreed.
So
Same with Gav. More Gav.
Yeah, Gav is good.
I don't know. Gav, I think, epitomizes just the bland nothing. Oh, here we go. Yes, I know he has the same accent as you, Lucy. Okay,
Well, the thing is,
relax.
he doesn't, because the guy
fell
who
for the
plays him is
bait.
fucking no. The guy who plays him is from Scarborough,
Oh, God. Here we
so
go.
it's fine.
Nuts.
The
Gav
thing
was
is
nuff
as
nuff.
well-
He was nuff.
If you know anything about Geordies, which is the accent that Gav has, you'll know that there. And this is not. I'm doing this to be spoiler free as possible. If you know anything about Geordies, there was a very infamous clip from Biker Grove where a kid gets shot in the face with a paint gun, and he says, "Duncan, I cannot see. I'm blind." And I just find it pretty messed up what happens to Gav. He's fine. There's a whole thing involving eyes, and I was like, "Are you joking? Are you joking?"
I'm sure that's not
This
what
is
they
the-
were thinking of when they did that, Lucy.
Well, no, I would love it. I would love it if someone on the writing
Actually
team
said
just
that.
came across that clip.
I love the idea of a bunch of Geordies being triggered by Final Fantasy XVI because of a Biker Grove reference.
Yup.
I want a Final Fantasy game now to have a character with like a harsh, disgusting New York, like Long Island accent, like mine, that just
That'd
like
be
rips
sick.
people out of the game.
That would be great.
I feel like
it
you could
works
get away
because
with
it's
that with a
mature
Sid.
now. So like
yeah.
that's my one other question is, do you guys like a mature Final Fantasy with gore, with the word fuck sometimes? I was
Shagging.
worried,
Yes,
but I liked it.
I love that because it doesn't feel like you know how sometimes how Borderlands. Okay, I don't want to call a Borderlands comparison, but you know how some games are like, oh, we have this mature rating, we can swear, we can get violent, and they just run it into the ground. I actually think the 16 handles it deftly. I think it's actually
I don't feel like
fun.
it added too much to it here and there, but like it felt refreshing just for what it was.
Yeah. The mature thing for me, neither here nor there, because, I think of Final Fantasy, I think of Xenoblade, for example, which is definitely not at all mature, but that series, I just love that series. I think it's awesome. And I just, as a JRPG, that kind of thing, I really adore it. And yeah, so I don't look at, or Persona, like, would you say Persona's mature? Yeah, it is, obviously,
Yeah, there's some
but in a
fucked up
very
stuff.
different way.
There's some-
In a very
yeah.
different way than this is mature,
Yeah.
right? It's still mature in terms of its themes and whatever, but tonally it's quite different. So yeah, for me, I don't think Final Fantasy becomes better when it's mature in its tone. It's just a different thing, but I'm okay with it being different in that way. Like I thought it was fine.
Yeah, I like that as a shake-up. I don't necessarily need the next one to continue. Like I don't need Final Fantasy 17 to also be mature rated, but for now, a nice little shake-up.
Yeah, sure.
I agree. All right, let's move on then to a listener question or a user question. If you have anything for us, email it to contact@friendspersecond.com. I remembered.
Nice. Very nice.
This one is from Max Spencer. With the new Expanse game getting announced from Telltale, what TV/film properties would be your dream adaptation to a video game, and what type of game would it be?
I've got one.
Go on.
Lost, definitely. I've never seen Lost, but I really love it. I really love that people enjoy it. Like, I love you people. You're freaks. So I'd be so happy for you guys to have a Lost game.
I mean, there was a Lost game.
There was Lost Via Dormis. Oh my god.
It was not
what an
good.
experience that game is. Oh no. But Lost could be a really cool survival crafting experience as a game, I think.
Is that what you want out of a Lost game?
No, but at the same, imagine you are on the island, you are figuring out the politics of the place, then maybe the others come, maybe the folks at the tail end of the plane come, you have to figure out what's going on with the Dahmer initiative, you find the hatch, you're figuring all that stuff out.
Listen, think about this. 60 John Locke's parachute onto an island, right? Lost Battle Royale.
Don't tell me what I can't do.
Exactly.
My answer for this one is Battlestar Galactica, baby.
There was a game for that.
It's pretty nerdy.
There was a Battlestar Galactica game, Battlestar Galactica Online, which I did play. It wasn't one of the best, but you could do easily a Mass Effect style action adventure game with that. Like, not knowing if some of your party members are actually Cylons who get activated later on. Like, there was, spoilers for Dragon Age Inquisition, but that game came out 9 years ago, but a very similar thing happens in there.
Sure. Baldur's Gate 2, same thing happened.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Like, actually, Dragon Age Origins too, right?
Yep.
Yeah, there's the elf in that. The one whose name began with a Z. He...
Been a while.
Or at least he did in my game. Yeah.
Right, okay.
But like, you could do dog fighting, so you're fighting in the colonial fleet, and then you're fighting against the Cylon raiders. You could go to a Cylon base ship. You could visit all the planets. It'd be cool.
This sounds like an Obsidian joint.
Yeah.
I just finished watching Succession, final episode. So what I really want is a Telltale Succession game where all you get to dish out is just the most horrific, hurtful stuff over and over again, and just with the odd,
fuck off.
Odd fuck off. There's like a
just
button you can press at any time that just says fuck off.
Kendall will remember that.
Kendall will remember that.
So you can on The Sims you can do custom sort of like game things at the moment, and someone just made a Succession thing where
that's
you
cool.
you play as the siblings, and you have a one crotchety elder parent who's dying.
Incredible. I love it. What a show though. What a devastating.
Incredible.
Yeah.
My one, I have thought long and hard about this for way too long. I've mentioned it. It'll be Remedy Games presents Supernatural. I think they would make.
I've said that before.
They would make an incredible co-op shooter, like with the weird supernatural elements of a Remedy game, but with actual like occult shit. And it's kind of Gears of War-y, where you've got these two brothers. One's really good at shooting, the other one's really good at like magic and shit like that, and it's just a story about them. I think they would do an amazing job with that.
I want them to make an X-Files game. That'd be cool.
Yep,
get back David Duchovny and Gillian Anderson, and they'd crush it. I have anything from Remedy, really.
Yeah,
it's all good.
Remedy
it's fine.
build.
I have a real one, since Lost didn't count because I've never actually seen it. And there was a Mike Bithell joint, but I would like more John Wick games. I think it's like primed for a video game, but I've seen a lot of people say they want like a third-person shooter Max Payne type, or like a game where it's like a third-person shooter where like you could assume it would be like canned animations for like finishers and stuff. I think
Sifu.
There needs to be it needs to be something more like Sifu. It needs to be there needs to be some creative angle to it, almost like where it's just you're not. It's not really like executing the shooting. It's managing the stamina and the timing between each person. Like you're working your way through finishing everybody. There's some sort of creative angle there that like I'm not smart enough to come up with, but I think there's something there.
Did you play the Bithell game, by the way?
A little bit, yeah.
That was that though. That's what
that was?
Well, essentially, but it was in a kind of grid-based, turn-based thing, or like you had to manage your time as you moved around.
Right.
Not quite what you're describing, but in a similar way. It wasn't just like punching and kicking. It was about like managing your time as you move through this level and like, you know what I mean? Executing stuff.
All right. So like a crazier, like gorier, like more real, like, but also I think it's like there's a story stuff, which like they're coming out with that show based on the Continental. I'm curious to see how that goes. But this is a weird thing I kind of want to harp on is the preservation of characters and actors. And we're seeing this more and more with like Harrison Ford being de-aged for Indiana Jones and like all this awkward shit that in my opinion doesn't always work, where I think it absolutely is allowed to and can work in a video game. If you had Harrison Ford play a young Indiana Jones for an entire video game, about it. If you have Keanu Reeves, who is, it's hard to, admit, but he is getting older.
Yeah.
A young Keanu Reeves in a John Wick, like young John Wick, like on his main adventures for the Russian mob, like that can work. And I would love to see stuff like that.
Yep.
Anyway, tangent over. Excuse me.
Yep.
Mike, sorry, the coffee's only just hitting now.
Start a petition.
Thank you, Max.
Obviously, there are way more games that have come out over the past couple of weeks. Let's chat about what we have been playing very quickly. I'll briefly say, because I can't go into it in too much detail, but I've been playing Viewfinder, which is that really cute, like, who's it from? Sad Owl Studios, published by Thunderful. And it's been around, I've seen it at like various stages over the years, definitely from trailers and stuff. It's such a cool concept. You take a picture, you hold on a picture in your hand and you put it up, and whatever is on the picture just changes the world. So you can add doors and bridges. It is just such a cool concept. I only just started it, so I can't say too much about it, but I'm having such a lovely time. Very whimsical, which is, and Ralph, you and I were talking about it, and I was like, it's a Lucy-ass game.
It is a Lucy-ass game, for sure. No, I played that actually at Summer Games Fest, and was blown away by it. But you just look at the trailers, and you're just like, it's so hard to describe what it is. Anyone that's listening to the podcast, apologies, but yeah, it's just the way that you are able to transform a space in this completely unexpected way that's only really possible in the world of video games. It's almost like, well, I guess it's something like Christopher Nolan, like with Inception, how there's all this weird, the way the world twists and turns and it's fucking whatever. It's like you can do that here in this game by holding up a Polaroid in front of a space, and then that makes it reality, It's so fascinating.
It reminds me of Superliminal. Was that what it's called? That game about perspective.
Sure.
Like it's very much that.
Yep. Spoke to the devs about it. They said that they've been doing a ton of playtesting because the biggest challenge they had was teaching people how to think in this way when they were playing the game, because people were just like getting so stumped sometimes. And so they've had to, really extensively playtest, redesign parts of it. And as I was playing through it, it felt very intuitive. They were very clearly guiding you through things without any pop-ups happening. They were just showing you how to do it in that kind of like a Nintendo-esque way of just, that user experience introduction was really flawless. So, when's that out? It's out soon, right?
Soon, yeah.
I think so.
There was a demo on Steam Next Fest, I think, too.
Yeah, I don't think that's available anymore though.
No, the demos will all be taken down, but it's super cool and it's super intuitive.
19th of July.
Is it challenging? There's like it's like a puzzler.
No,
right?
It's a puzzler. Yeah, it's not. Well, maybe it gets hard later, but I don't get the feeling that it would become hard. I get the feeling that it's just going to be a chill, fun, like just enjoy yourself kind of game, that kind of thing.
Yeah,
I like that.
Very, very colorful and just very. It kind of. Obviously, there's the fantastical element to it because you are literally walking into pictures that you are holding up, but there's something about the world where it feels very familiar and yet very alien at the same time.
Yes.
Which I think is a very very cool and like makes you want to explore it. And even though actually interacting with things is very minimal, it just means that I'm still just aching to see more of it. I think it's a really cool concept, very well executed. Remains to be seen, obviously, if it maintains that throughout the whole thing, but I'm having a nice time. I'm playing it on Steam Deck too, and it works pretty great.
Lovely.
But what else have you boys been playing? Who wants to start?
Just briefly, I booted up Ghost Trick. So Ghost Trick
yeah, you mentioned.
Yeah, Ghost Trick is a remaster of a 3DS game that was created by the person behind Ace Attorney. And you play as a dead person who is able to possess objects and then can use them to sort of like manipulate events, like travel back in time and save people from dying and whatever. I've only played the first, I'm going to say, hour and a bit, but it makes such a strong first impression. Like,
is this your first
writing?
Time?
Yeah. No.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah. The writing is so tight. Like, it is just top tier. The fucking desk lamp that I met has more personality than 85% of the characters I met in most AAA games over the last 10 years. You know what I mean? It's not exaggeration, by the way. Like, the writing is that good that it just pulls you in. The art is fantastic. The puzzles are clever. It moves at such a great pace. It's just such a really fantastically put together little product so far. And I've heard it sort of carries that all the way through. So I'm really keen
Missile
for that.
yet?
Yeah, you have met Missile, the little Pomeranian. Yeah, he's sick. He's fantastic.
He's so cute.
So yeah, it's just it's so many interesting ideas in it as well. It's kind of like this sort of, like Lucas Pope. He has these ideas that are just like, you're like, how did you come up with this shit and put it all into a game and make it work? It's that where it's like, how did you come up with the idea that you can travel between scenes using the phone line, because that's how the dead travel between worlds, through telephone lines. It's just gamifying so many objects and ideas and putting them all into this little neat package with top tier presentation and amazing writing. And as I said, so much personality for each character you meet. I'm like just really blown away by it in this first hour alone. It's very few games make such a strong first impression, I find. So
weirdly detailed animations, like weirdly.
Yeah, was it like that in the 3DS?
Yes.
Or
so
right.
The swishing and of like
everything.
Hair and cloaks and the little spin that he does every time he emotes. Like he's like, it's weird point of reference, but like he's a detective who has like Michael Jackson mannerisms.
Yes.
So like he'll moonwalk into a crime scene and do a little spin. And then,
I'm sold.
He's like he's so good.
But that's
it's
a
so
perfect
good.
example of just like so many little tiny details that they have put into this that make the presentation just pop, like just to a level that just seems just so blown away by it.
It's one of those games that is, the best way to describe it is genuinely delightful. Like you start playing it and it just puts a smile on your face and you're like, I just want to keep playing this. And it's and it's got like nice puzzles in there as well, and every line of dialogue is going to make you laugh. Like it's like
it's so
funny.
good.
That's good.
So I definitely recommend checking it out. That's just releasing, I think tomorrow it comes out, or so it'll be out by the time this podcast hits. It's called Ghost Trick. Nice. It's on all platforms. It should be a discount title because it just has that kind of energy. I'm sure it's like half price or whatever. But yeah, I think I'm going to play and finish that. I'm really, really loving it.
Yeah. What else? So Street Fighter 6 also came out. We haven't really talked about it since it kind of came out around the summer game craziness. I have not touched it. I'm not a fighting game person. I have it. Well, we're doing something at work where we're going to be playing it for something, so I've been abstaining.
I watched the best thing about I can say Street Fighter, because I haven't played it, right? I would say the best thing I can say about it is I watched Jake's video, and Jake has this line in it. It's like everyone has like a sick ass and cool boobs. And I'm like, that is the greatest line ever in any video review of all time. Just fucking everyone else go home. Cool everyone has a sick ass and cool boobs.
It's true. Boobs or boots?
Boobs, cool boobs.
I thought you said boots, and I was like, oh.
No. I had to pause the video when I was watching it because I lost my shit so much at that line.
Oh, I'm glad.
So yes,
Tinder profile. I'm looking for sick ass and cool boobs.
I haven't not played it at all. Otherwise, that's literally my only comment on Street Fighter.
So
other than I can see it. Obviously, people are really liking it. But are people liking it? Are they sticking with it? How's it going in that longer tail stuff?
Yeah, it's going. There's more vibrancy and like buzz around Street Fighter than there has been in a long time. Street Fighter 5 was like a game that came out and there wasn't a lot of like excitement around it. People like eventually, it was almost felt begrudging in the way that community kind of like rallied around it. It was like, it's just Street Fighter, so we're kind of obligated to play this game and figure it out. And it never yielded the kind of excitement that Street Fighter 4 definitely did. And this feels like it's a complete like 180 on that, and there's like a buzz around the entire game, and people are figuring things out, and there's an excitement for more content. There's people who I've never seen talk about or play fighting games being like, I've got Street Fighter, I'm playing Street Fighter, it's fantastic. And we were in LA, and people were like bringing Steam Decks and not switches, hitboxes, and like
we had it in our green room, didn't we?
Yeah, at one point,
people
night,
just like bouncing and going
gathered around, like people just playing that, and it's like it is like, and that just speaks, and it's happening because it's a fantastic game. It's got like open-ended systems. It's got way more room for creativity. It's actually got a cast of characters that has really kind of like people have really taken to. It can always be hit and miss when they make new characters, and even one of the characters in the game, Luke, was introduced in the Street Fighter 5, and they brought him on, and they were like, he's the new face of Street Fighter, and people were like, he sucks, he looks like a douche, and we hate him.
I remember though that thread, there was a lot of anger towards that.
Exactly. And they took that character and reworked him to the point where now people genuinely like him. He's like a nice, okay. They've like reworked. He doesn't look as much like a douche, but he's still got that cocky mannerism, and he feels like he's a leading man now. He'll never replace Ryu or Ken, but like
sure,
they at least are making a good case for him. And I know people who are like main Luke now instead of being just disgusted by his hair and his attitude.
He's got weird Popeye arms.
Yes, weird Popeye arms. That weird like he had like
looking him up.
The 5 from Street Fighter, the Street Fighter 5 logo like tattooed across his chest, and he looked like a Jake Paul wannabe, and it was awful. But yeah, like the systems are like, now he looks way better. He looks like he looks like a kind of guy that you wouldn't be upset having a conversation with. But yeah, like the systems are really well thought out and satisfying. People are like really spending a lot of time figuring out characters and finding hidden depths of them, and figuring out how these weird systems interlock and break or don't break, and can be like exploited. And there's like a buzz around competitive play as well, and it's just an exciting time to be a Street Fighter fan right now, especially, which is something that I've definitely missed, and it's been like, I've been hoping it would be that, and I'm so glad that it is that. And I'm like excited about the future of this game. There was a time when like Street Fighter 5 came out, and they were like, we've got new characters, and I was like, I don't know if I care, man. But like, I'm eager for the new DLC characters to drop. I want to play more. I've sadly not played as much as I want to, just because of traveling and Summer Games Fest and reviews and that kind of stuff. But I'm just dying to sit down and spend loads of time with it.
Is it like your daily driver, you reckon? Is it like My Destiny, and is it your like
100%? Once I think I need to actually like start building the habit again, because
right.
But what I know that once I sit down, and Final Fantasy has been taking a lot of my time, as is Diablo, and those are games that like I start playing to kind of almost sanity check reviews. Like if a review comes in, I generally try and play the games at the same time, and because of that, it means that like Street Fighter came in, I started playing that game for the review purposes, and then Diablo came in, I had to move to that, and then I moved to Final Fantasy, and then Summer Games Fest, and then we were away for a while. So now I'm just waiting for like the calm to hit again, so I can jump in, and it will definitely become my daily driver in the same way Destiny is for you. Street Fighter has always been my daily driver.
Yeah,
I'm just glad that like your type of person likes it, because I played it, I really liked it, but I was like, hey, I like it. I'm like a casual. I think it's a good game for people to get into, but like, I have no idea how hardcore Street Fighter fans, the community, is going to respond to it. So I'm so happy. That's good, because like it is just a good package. It's easy to recommend, man. Like in terms of like, compared to like maybe other than like the NetherRealm games, because you get all that fun single player stuff. Like out of all the other fighting game franchises, like this is the one now I'm like, oh yeah, no, if you haven't played a Street Fighter or like a fighting game, this is a good one to jump in, because there's so much, and I like all of it. It's all like really compelling. The tour mode is fun. It's wacky and silly, but it's a good way of introducing you to the characters, the systems, stuff like that. And I talked about it in my video, but just like the control schemes and how they can kind of gateway drug you to the next one, you know, to go from modern to classic, I think is like super smart. And it is definitely one that I will actually go back to. I usually bounce off of these hard, but now I know like if there is like a place where I see someone playing it, or like when you guys had it in the green room from the Giant Bomb thing, I was like, oh, I would walk up and I would hop in for a little while. And I can't really say that about a lot of fighting games, and that's big for me. Like it made Street Fighter exciting again for me as an outsider, because like I was caught in that Street Fighter 5 thing where like I wasn't like a Street Fighter person, but I was like, nobody really seems super enthused about this.
Yeah.
So now for the enthusiasm to be swirling around 6, it's great.
There's a lightness and almost like a fun approachability to Street Fighter 6 that wasn't there in Street Fighter 5, because it's harder to feel good playing it. Street Fighter 5, you had to really feel like you were doing something. You had to have a intimate knowledge of how the game works, because it was built in a way that the only way to feel like you were doing something is to know what you weren't able to do and the limitations of it, and then figure it out. Whereas this feels like you can pick it up and just start hitting buttons, and one, cool stuff will happen. Two, like you very quickly, certainly more than Street Fighter 5, you start to feel a sense of clarity in what you're doing, and you notice, oh, I'm doing this, and thus this is happening, and when I do that, it results in the other player doing this. So you start to learn how to play that game much faster than you would Street Fighter 5. It kind of reminds me of almost, I don't want to make the comparison, but like it's kind of like Smash, where like you pick it up and you're like, oh, if I press up on the stick, this uppercut comes out and it does this. And although Street Fighter 6 definitely has those modern control schemes, that's not what I mean. It's like you press a button and you know, oh, this is going to happen. And then it's very good about rapidly building your confidence in the game, in your ability to play the game, or at the very least in your ability to have fun. Because oftentimes I saw a lot of people play the game, they won't win, but they have enough fun during the process of the fight that they still like, I didn't win, but I had a good time doing it. I want to do it again. And I feel like that's a key kind of major factor in why it's being treated and being received so well.
It feels like very organic how they do it. Like it's like how it's all presented, the amount of content in it that it does get you into. Because I've always been, I dabble, I jump into all the fighting games, but I've always been like expressly intimidated by Street Fighter, and I went into this one like, okay, I'll see what happens. And slowly it kind of just like opened up, and I was like, holy shit, I get this. I really finally get this.
Yeah, I definitely want to circle back to it, because
too.
It looks great, and I just at least want to sample the World Tour stuff, and I want to see the arcade stuff, and I don't think I can imagine myself going into the online stuff, but hey, maybe if it pulls me in and I really connect to it, sure. But I do want to see what they've done with all that, because everything I've heard about it is just everyone's loving all that stuff as well. So yeah,
make a weird freak, go run around World Tour mode, give it a couple of hours. It starts a little slow, but like I mean, you could just run up and punch anybody you want.
How long does it take to get through that World Tour? Is it like 10 hours? What do you reckon?
I think it's longer than that. I think it's like
oh really?
Okay,
It's
a little longer than
okay.
that.
Yeah. Surprise!
I mean, it depends how many like old ladies you're beating up on the way.
Sure,
yeah.
a bit of
that
was what I was doing
Yeah,
mostly.
Oh yeah, it's my world tour is it's on site for old ladies. Like if you're an old lady, you're getting it in my
It's
world.
on site right there.
I'm very excited to listen to the soundtrack. Which, have you seen this? The soundtrack is coming to streaming devices, platforms with a cool 284 tracks.
Oh my god! Wow,
Yeah.
how does it have that many? Like, is it like
I do not know.
that's wild. Wow. Okay.
Good lord.
There's
Unless,
like there's like day and night versions of a lot of songs, so it's like very weird.
But still, 200. Gee, almost 300. That's excessive.
Wall-to-wall
But,
bangers.
Let's hope they do that much sound track when they eventually make a new sequel to Marvel vs. Capcom.
Oh God, imagine.
Please, let's do that.
Gonna take you for a ride.
That's right. I actually have been playing Diablo 4 actually, and because I obviously haven't had the chance to play anything while I was away, and then came back and had to smash Final Fantasy, and then Destiny is the kind of thing where I'm like, I should be playing more Destiny because it's the season and I've only got a small window to play it, because I actually go away on holiday next month. For like a full month with my family. So I'm like, I really need to smash out Destiny to get everything done for this season so I don't miss out. But the truth is, I'm just really not feeling Destiny at the moment, and a lot of the Destiny community are feeling that. Like, it's really at a very low point for the game. It's facing a lot of challenges in terms of like its seasonal content, its technical state, just overall momentum and whatever. And also, I think there are other games that are really pulling people's attention. This is a big year for video games. There's a lot of stuff that people want to play. And Diablo scratches a lot of itch that Destiny scratched. You know, they're both big looters where you build characters and do the thing, right? So I've been going back to that, and I've been sort of chipping away at a character, like a druid, and I'm like level 45 or something now. I'm still only just past Act 1. I'm just doing everything on the map, taking it super slow. But yeah, I'm really enjoying just having that to like randomly click on while I catch up on old YouTube videos. And there's been a lot going on in the background for me personally right now. And having Diablo as the thing that I can go to is just... Because what I also do is I installed Fortnite. I installed Apex Legends. And I'm going to try some other live service stuff right now to see what clicks. And my stupid looter shooter brain just always comes back to like, I want to click on things and I want to collect loot. And so Apex looks really fun. It's got all this cool stuff. And I'm like, wow, they added all these zip lines on the map and look how fast you can get around now. There's all these new characters. And I'm like, this rules. But I'm like, it's also a little bit stressful. And I died after getting 0 kills. I'm going to go play some Diablo. And then I sit there for 4 hours and I just click on demons and I'm like, this rules, man. Hell yeah, let's go. So it's been interesting. I think as well, there's the seasonal stuff coming later, which I'm interested in. That does involve creating a new character, which a lot of people are quite upset about. They're surprised to learn that. But I mean, I don't know. I'll see how that goes. I actually expect I'll take a bit of time off Destiny in the future. And just to, well, I mean, like, there's just nothing going on right now.
Yeah,
it's, and I don't see that changing anytime soon. Until the final shape.
You're green.
Can't
Can't you
year.
be green now? You can shoot green.
Yeah. But believe me, we've spanked that. We've done it. You know, it's fantastic. I love it. Don't get me wrong, but it's done. And so now it's like, I think it's also healthy to take a break from games. You know, like Absolutely. It's healthy to take a break from these games. The challenge, obviously, is the whole FOMO thing where it becomes harder to get all the stuff. They don't want you to take a break, but I think it's important that you do. Otherwise, you just start to feel really burned out by them. So I'm listening to that, playing Diablo, and liking it overall. Like there's lots of problems, I think, with it still. I'm playing a druid. He's not super fun to play. It's also the whole itemization and progression side of it's quite slow and quite stifled. But for now, I'm happy just to be, as I said, clicking on demons. So is anyone else playing Diablo still? Is anyone else still touching it?
Yeah, it drew me in way more than 3.
Wow, cool.
I am loving the world, the
you're playing
atmosphere. Yeah, I did like a first impressions video.
I knew that, but I wasn't sure if you were still playing it now.
But yeah, I try to when there's time because I just like, again, like it's vibes. I just really like just going in, getting a couple whacks, killing a couple demons. You know, it looks cool, it feels cool, it sounds cool.
Yeah,
and like I know a lot of people, it's like their passive game. And I know it's like a lot of hours, but I love just like kind of putting headphones in and turning the lights off and just kind of zoning out in it.
Totally. Yeah.
I went pretty hard on it in the review period, and then I just didn't have it in me to start it again. So I have it, but I'm just going to take a little bit of a break. And I think, you know, once I'm through, still going away, chipping away at Zelda, Final Fantasy, once I'm kind of done with those, I will return.
Yeah.
Have you tried putting it on a Steam Deck?
You know what? I have put it on.
Oh.
Hell yeah.
You should put it on a Steam Deck.
This is the ROG
Ally.
This is the ROG Ally, and I've been playing it on this actually. I actually have been, and it works perfectly. Didn't at first. It was a bit rough, but then they sort of like Diablo patched, and then this had some patches as well, and now it runs super well. I mean, it's just like a very good way to sit here and play handheld Diablo. So none of you guys have this yet, do you?
No, I've been thinking about getting one.
I would say, like, just very quick high level review of this, like in this moment. I would say if you've already got a Steam Deck, I don't think you need this, right? I think the Steam Deck is going to meet your needs in much the same way this does, in nearly as good a capacity when it comes to technical specs, but the Steam Deck is superior in terms of its software and its support and that sort of thing, which is where this still has a ways to go, right? So you can definitely it's easier to play Battle.net games and Epic games and that sort of stuff here, unless you want to go through the bullshit of doing it on the Steam Deck via or whatever, through Linux or whatever. Not that difficult, but whatever, it is a barrier. You will get better performance on the Asus, but it costs you the battery, so you have to be conscious of that. Yeah. But overall, it still feels to me like if you've got a deck, you definitely don't need this. However, if you don't, this is definitely something worth checking out because it has a lot of stuff that makes it like really, really worth checking out, I think. So.
Yeah.
Damn.
Yeah, Diablo works perfectly fine on Steam Deck. It takes like maybe half an hour to get it on there, less than
Correct.
that. And most of that time is just waiting. But I was surprised at how well it runs on there. Obviously, you do need to have an internet connection to play it at all times.
Sure.
So like that was one of the major downsides of taking it to Summer Games Fest. It was like I'm only really playing it. Stop smiling, Lucy. I'm only really playing it at my hotel. When I told her I've got my Steam Deck with Diablo, she's like, where are you going to be playing that then? On the plane?
I pulled this face.
Yeah,
but I did play it a few times in the hotel
Out
with
of
Wi-Fi.
spite.
Just out of spite. And it worked really well.
Yes. It does. So, but no, it's nice to see these handheld PCs like kind of happening, and Xbox is going to be committing more and more to that Asus device. Like they're going to be doing partnership stuff around it and Game Pass stuff and whatever. And it's cool. I like it. I think
it's nice that there's options, and I think that being a way stronger option than something like the Aya Neo.
Yes.
Which they're on like their second gen of that. I had friends that are like handheld perverts that sold me. Like I was sitting there like, okay, yeah, maybe I should get one. And I'm like, wait, no,
you
I
don't.
have a Steam Deck.
No.
This is ridiculous.
You
this
definitely
is crazy.
don't. It's marginal improvements over the Steam Deck. I would say that. And like later on, there's going to be, because Asus will surely make like a version 2 of this, whereas Valve have said that they're not going to be making a new piece of kit for a while. And I think when that performance gap grows, this becomes more compelling. And also when they like iron out a lot of their like software side stuff, and really, hopefully they stick with this, and hopefully they build out this category, because I think this has a lot of potential. But right now, I think the Steam Deck, if someone was to ask me, what should I buy? I would say, buy a Steam Deck. I actually would.
Where the Steam Deck falls short.
This is a few $100s, maybe $200 more expensive than the Steam Deck. Like not like massive price difference, but like it's something.
But still,
yeah.
Where the Steam Deck falls short, like do you see yourself ever playing Destiny on the Ally?
I actually have played it on the Ally, yeah. And so one of the things, unfortunately, at the beginning was that there was some like stuttering issues with this, but that has apparently been smoothed out by the BIOS updates. I haven't checked it yet, but the thing is, like that is a huge use case for this, because the Linux platform does limit what you can do with the Steam Deck. There are workarounds for some things, but not others. And Destiny is a good example where you cannot play that on a Steam Deck. Actually, no, that's true. You could do it through Windows. Yeah, that's not true. There are always ways to get around it on the Steam Deck, but it's a pain in the ass, right? Versus this is just plug and play. And so I have tested Destiny on it. But again, I'm not playing. I don't use this device for that. I use it because I want to play like Ghost Trick, for example, which I'm playing on my Steam Deck now, but I could play it on this or whatever. Like I view these devices as a chance to play indies, last gen games, low resolution stuff. Like I don't want to play AAA bangers on the handheld. I have my setups for that. But for other things, I think that's absolutely perfect.
Last question. If you're sitting on the couch in terms of feel, which one would you go for? Which one would you prioritize?
Look, the Steam Deck is really nice because it has these big grips at the side of it that really like your hands sink into. Having said that, this is lighter. Look, I don't think that'll be a determining factor. I think this is plenty comfortable. I would say that. Like you're not going to, you hold the Switch and you're like, my hands, they're about to fucking fall off. Whereas you hold this and you're like, yeah, this is fine. Either way, probably would prefer the Steam Deck on balance, but it's a lot heavier, the Steam Deck, and it also has a bigger, bulkier profile. This is quite thin and it packs away quite smartly. So there's lots of reasons why ergonomically this is perfectly fine. I don't think that'll be a differentiating factor between the two.
Okay,
cool. Cool. That's the little ROG Ally deck on the fly. There you go.
Yeah.
ROG Ally review on the fly.
Nice. Anyone else been playing anything that they want to talk about? Anything for the class?
Marvel Snap. That's about it. Otherwise,
damn, still playing that?
Wow.
I'm still on that, man. I'm like level 3,000, like collector's level on that.
Jesus.
Yeah. Haven't spent any money except for the season passes. It's a great game, and I really recommend checking it out. Like, their monetization is laughable in the sense that they try and charge you like $100 for shit. But the good news is you don't need any of that. It's all garbage. Just ignore it and then just play the game, and it's fine, you know? So I straight up never buy anything on it, and I never feel ripped off. I never feel like I'm not able to enjoy the game properly. It's just a really great game. I love it. I really do love it so much. It used to be Clash Royale for me on my phone until that game made me really mad all the time, and I was like, I need to quit this game now for my mental health. And now this is great because it's much lower stakes. You don't really give a fuck about this. Nice. You know. So yeah, Marvel Snap, man.
You heard that, Tim?
Q1 2024 for Hollow Knight.
No, it's not.
Are you joking?
I said an Android. Please calm down.
Oh, dude.
What did you say?
They just, for some reason, they've just made Hollow Knight. I've seen a bunch of tweets. Hollow Knight pre-order. And it's just the Androids everywhere.
God.
Oh, like the little figurine.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
There's a Hollow Knight good small pre-order. Hollow Knight Silk Song. Stand.
It is really cute in Android, to be fair. It's really good.
It is cute.
All right, I'm
but
going to move us on then.
doing Hollow Knight Silk Song round the base pre-order is a bit cheeky.
That's very cheeky. All right, I'm going to move us along to this week in the Wayback. Every episode, we take a look back at some of the games that released in the kind of these 2 weeks many moons ago. It's just nice to reminisce sometimes. Tam, I'm going to go to you. What's your this week in the Wayback?
I think Ralph mentioned this earlier, but Marvel vs. Capcom 2 that came out. This day, many years ago, a masterpiece of a video game. Just the one of the best fighting games of all time. I would say probably the best video game soundtrack ever created.
Yes, I think you're
would
quite
say.
right.
And the best thing about that soundtrack is you can put it over any game and it improves that game. So I used to do these stream, which were Hades jukebox streams, which is like I would turn the music down in Hades and let whoever's watching the chat select what music it was.
Sure.
And whenever I put on Marvel vs. Capcom 2, people would be like, this is fucking awesome. Let's just do this. So I would just play Hades through the Marvel vs. Capcom soundtrack and it would work so good. Responsible for many memes. One of the best fighting games ever created.
It really was, wasn't it? I mean, we grew up with fighting games in my house. We were never super serious about them, but like we definitely had Marvel vs. Capcom. We had Street Fighter 2, and we had and Mortal Kombat, the original, and 3, and Soul Calibur. But I think the one that we probably put the most time in, I think the one we put the most time is probably Soul Calibur. But I think number 2 is Marvel vs. Capcom because we just loved it so much. It was just like, it was incredible. What a game! What a game!
I love the art. I love the way the characters look. Like seeing all my favorite characters, but like in these styles is so cool. Even the cabinet itself, like, just looks so sick.
Yep. Yeah.
If you just go to Google and type in Bengus, Bengus, that's the artist behind that style. The amount of times that I just go to Google Images and look at Bengus's work, it's just so fucking good. Oh my god.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Wow. Cool. Well,
Jake?
I got. Oh, sorry. Okay, Jake, yeah, please.
Oh,
no,
sorry.
Ralph, go ahead.
I got
steamroll me. Yours is good.
So that same sort of vintage, that same sort of era. It was 25 years ago today. Banjo-Kazooie released on the Nintendo 64.
Oh my god!
Speaking of like greatest games of all time, arguably one of the greatest 3D platformers ever. I mean. Yeah, well, hang on. Is there anything better than Mario and this? Is there any better 3D platformers than those two games?
Klonoa.
Legend of the Gobos, baby.
Spyro.
Spyro sucks. Sorry. Is that just bring more haters onto this podcast?
All these Greek people are like, what did you say about Spiros? Banjo-Kazooie, incredible, absolutely flawless, top to bottom, every inch of its design, every like creative idea and mechanics. The soundtrack, Grant Kirkhope, just absolutely flawless, just like unmistakable in every single note. I don't know, man. It's just, I don't want to say they don't make them like this anymore, but it almost feels like they don't make them like this anymore. Like, it just What an incredible achievement for that game to exist in that way. Just this raw burst of creativity and perfection on every single axis. You know what I mean? So, yeah, man. And then Nuts and Bolts. So Banjo Tooie and then Nuts and Bolts. So, well, things have to end eventually. So
the good times can't last forever.
That's right.
Jake, what's yours?
Mine is 24 years ago, in 1999. It was the Japan release, but we're going to roll with it. Dino Crisis released. And Dino Crisis hit at a time where everything was perfect. Not really. It was not the case, but I was a little kid, so everything was. Dinosaur stuff was at a high. We had Jurassic Park, The Lost World. Survival horror, Resident Evil style stuff was at a high. We were in the thick of that. Resident Evil 1, 2, 3. And Dino Crisis was just a perfect storm of that type of stuff. Is it as good as the Resident Evil games? No. The first one, I think, is the only one I actually really played. But it was very cool because it retained some of that tension. And especially the early moments of that game, the way they build the fear of like the raptors and everything and the gore was just so great.
Yep.
The main character not as memorable, but just it was, and it's one of the few of those types of games that I just never went back and replayed. So I could be totally rose-colored glasses with this.
No.
But it was special.
I refuse to believe that's not being remade. Like, I refuse to believe. I would bet my life savings on the idea that right now Capcom are working. There's a team there working away remaking this game. Because imagine not remaking this game. Can you imagine just leaving it there, all the potential this IP has, and not doing anything with it? Come on, man. So no way. No. There's people working on it, man, and I don't want to hear otherwise. Okay, don't upset me. I can't.
Let him dream,
I can't do it.
Tam.
I'm not taking it away from you. I hope it's happening.
Mine, just because it's a game that I really, really enjoyed, and it's just because I can't believe it's been that long. But 8 years ago, Batman Arkham Knight.
Oh yeah.
I can't believe it's been 8 years already. It's wild.
Sure.
And the one issue with Arkham Knight, there are a few issues with Arkham Knight, but the thing is that Troy Baker at that time was in so many video games that I immediately recognized his voice.
Who does he play in it?
The Knight.
He's the Arkham
Knight.
Oh, okay.
But also there's there is a twist to it too about the Knight's true identity, and so I was like, well, got that.
Right.
But I miss the Rocksteady Arkham games so much, and we talked about it a little bit earlier. What an incredible trilogy!
Everyone always shits all over the car combat in that game.
I had
everyone say it was so terrible they did the car, and I'm like, I thought it was fine. Everyone's like it would ruin that game. I'm like, I don't get why people are so hung up on it.
I actively like the Batmobile as a presence. I think the worst it gets is when it forces you to do the racetrack stuff. But otherwise, I think it's incredibly well implemented.
Yeah, and
I think I just got sick of some of the tank stuff after a while.
Yeah,
and the fact that they made you fight Deathstroke, but he's like in a tank. It's like a car combat game. I was like, wait a minute, what the fuck? But that's it. It's not that bad, especially going back.
I still can't believe how good it looked and looks.
It still looks great.
Incredible.
On consoles.
Incredible.
On consoles.
Yeah, on consoles.
It looked good on the on PC, but it just didn't work on PC. So yeah.
It's got the Street Fighter philosophy. Everybody has a sick ass and cool boobs.
That is our t-shirt. That is a t-shirt, by the way.
Sick ass and cool
sick
boobs.
Ass and cool boobs.
Let the L's hit the floor.
Whoever you are. It also
we should genuinely
Arkham
be
Knight,
taking notes about these.
Yeah.
Arkham Knight is interesting too because it also is like encapsulates. I'm pretty sure it's definitely Kevin Conroy at his like meanest version of Batman,
Mm-hmm.
his grittiest version of Batman. Like it's very intense, and it's just kind of cool as like a unique snapshot.
Because mentally he's kind of like coming apart, but like he's going through some shit, you know?
Yeah.
And I really like that angle as well, that like, you know, the Joker in his head and just like that really worked for me a lot. And I like that game. Like it really, I've never understood why it had such a rough reception. And it's that kind of thing where like, if I was in games media back then, how would I have viewed it? Because like I wasn't to work in games and I just played it and I'm like, there's rules. And so I don't know. Maybe I should go back and play it one of these days.
It holds up really well.
Yeah.
Really well. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
So anyway, that was another episode of the Friends Per Second podcast. Thank you so much, everyone, for watching, listening.
Yeah.
If you would like to leave us a nice comment, rate, review, make us feel good, we appreciate you. Any listener questions, send them to contact@friendspersecond.com. We'll go around the room. Tam, where can people find you?
You can find me on Gamespot.com, Twitch, TomorH, Twitter, TomorH, and various other places.
Thank you for joining us today, by the way,
Tam.
Thanks
for being here, man.
Yeah, thanks, Tam.
Thank you for having me.
It's good to have you here.
Yeah.
Always a pleasure.
Yeah, because I never talk to you, ever.
No.
This is a rare occurrence.
It's a rare treat for us.
Jake, what about you?
You can find me on the internet, youtube.com/Jake Baldino, Game Rank sometimes, and here, of course.
Yes, same with me. You'll find me on the internet. Chill up. You'll find me on the pages of the Final Fantasy subreddits, being burned in effigy. So just look out for those posts. They're always a highlight. And otherwise, you'll find me on Twitter and wherever else. So
I'm over at Gamespot, Giant Bomb. You can find me on Twitter, at least James Games. Thank you again for watching. Jake, take us away.
Yeah, I mean, at the very least, we're probably also going to end up on the Kingdom Hearts Reddit forums.
Let's go.
Because of tomorrow. We should
come at me.
We should edit that bit out. So instead of seeing all four faces at once, they just
zoom in on
only
me.
shows that one face so that when it gets clipped, we're not in it, you know?
I'll just say to those people, tie your big weird shoes and go to bed.